Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto had the chance to exist in the DC universe. Living a new life in another reality, Naruto now must handle a lot of complications of him interacting with various heroes, villains, and anti-heroes. How will things go with them interacting with a nobody? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard! Chapter 18, Worst April Fool's Day Ever, of all time. It seems to be a beautiful day so far in the city of Gotham. With the rain that has been going on for several days now, has actually helped clear up the air and wash away some of the filth in the city. Hard to tell sometimes, since wherever one goes, whether it's high in the sky, on the streets or down in the underground, the city is always dirty. But most people would want to try to forget how dirty the city is like at times. From the crimes committed, the horrors, and even its history. Most try to look for the bright light through the muck and grime so they could try to be clean in such a place. Reason why today could possibly be a good day to do so. One might wonder why exactly. Well, today is actually April Fool's Day and everyone could use a good laugh to possibly help lift everyone's spirits, even if it's just for one day. With the sun rising in the east, everyone is starting out their day from shops opening up and everyone heading to work. Things seem to be rather normal. Well, as normal as this city could try to be with its bleak past. But something seems to be amiss as a barge carrying oddly green garbage is floating through the river. What seemed even stranger about its waste cargo was that's emanating large amounts of green gas. So, when it started to pass under one of the many bridges of Gotham, a lot of the gas was passing through the area like an armored truck driving to the first destination for the day. Cough cough, goddamn. Cough, something smells disgusting. The armored truck driver said as he kept on coughing with the smell coming through the open window of the vehicle. He had thought that with such a nice day, he would risk opening up the window to smell the fresh air, but ended up smelling something bad. So as the man kept on driving, the cough started to change into something else, something unnatural. Cough cough, ha. 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 Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. The sounds of wheezing laughter were starting to fill the air as the driver was starting to swerve around the lanes. Luckily no other driver was present, but if there were, a big accident would have happened already. The action kept going on as the truck had almost hit a few workers on the bridge before it passed by them. Hey! Watch where you're going, asshole! One of the workers yelled out before he started to cough along with his co-workers. God damn! Did someone die without anyone knowing? I know cough, right? Cough, ha. 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 Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. The laughter seemed to be rather contagious as everyone nearby was starting to laugh. Each person that was laughing out loud were holding their sides in pain with how strong it was going to the point several people had to either sit or lie down to help support them. It was like everyone affected by the laughs were losing all senses aside from the pure joyous laughter. The one armored truck driver was even feeling the pain just now as he started to lose control of the car when passing through the rising part of the bridge. It was too late for him as the vehicle drove off of the raised part of the bridge to send it down to the river below. Once it landed in the water, the driver soon realized what happened and had to get out of the car to swim for safety. Naruto's loft. Swish 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 swish. Sounds of drifting air were being made as Naruto was swinging around a rubber staff during his early morning training. He had been doing this for about an hour now since he'd been focusing on staff fighting in general ever since he got his wind lance. It has been a bit of a struggle to switch up his staff fighting style since he has been used to doing a side and the weight is mostly placed on one end, but now the lance is evenly weighted out on both. So having to adjust the swings and movements had been tricky with his muscle memory trying to go straight into the scythe techniques. Swish 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 swish. Off to the nearby couch has various books checked out from the Gotham library that have some stick/staff fighting styles. ranging from some styles from Asian and African countries to help him a little on figuring them out better. He ended up copying down the various depictions down into his growing notebook to reference back to at a later time once he turned back the library books. He did find it odd that the library has them, but he can't argue with such a good chance like this. Speaking of books, his notebook had started to change from that of a notebook to a regular-sized, hardcover book. There was nothing oddly special on the covers except for the symbol present in his weapons being on it. He guessed the change happened after he got his next weapon and it needed to contain more apparently. Who knows for sure, but it didn't stop him from sketching inside of its various blank pages. One of the things he was starting to sketch was something for him to write on if he doesn't want to rely on his lance all the time to go into the sky. It was something of a safety thing that came up the other day when getting people out of a burning building. He had to summon his 5 additional lances to help get people down safely, but it was rather difficult since some couldn't hold onto the weapon or properly sit on it until getting onto the safe ground. With him racking his brain, Naruto ended up with an idea of an air glider of sorts and a sidecar for additional passengers. It's a pretty good set of designs he had managed, but only on the exterior. If he wanted to possibly create a better one, he'll need to know what kind of inner mechanics would probably work to make this function. But there's the thing, this kind of an idea with its technology is not really known in the world right now. The only places he could think of that might be coming close to this idea are LexCorp and Cyberbiotics, but he heard through some tech grapevine that they're just in the same stages as the publisher, just on sketches. Swish 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 swish. Naruto didn't have anything going on today with it being his day off and he had hoped to spend time with Selena. But it turned out that she and Shizen had to leave the country for a wildlife opportunity that he can't remember at the moment on where exactly. His girlfriend did say that she's cashing in what Bruce owed her now since she hasn't gotten any donations lately and wanted to take care of this thing quickly. The Uzumaki didn't falter really, but he and her had some good quality time the other night before she left that morning. Sai seems odd to not have her around after a while now. Naruto said as he stopped his swingings before turning to his only companion at the moment. Isn't that right, Isis? His only response from the black cat was a nod before she got off of her placement on the couch and went to her feeding bowl to keep eating her breakfast. Yeah, I thought so. With him finishing up his training for the day, he went to take a shower so that he could possibly head over to Arkham to check up on Pam and Harley. Naruto would have also gone over there to check up on Harvey, but things are at a very delicate stage at the moment with him. Unlike seeing Pam right away with her mind mostly stable when she willingly checked herself in, Harvey's mind was not along with him being charged for his 3-week crime spree. With how things have gone so far, the scarred man could only have Grace on his guest list and various doctors assigned to him. Luckily for him, Harley was one of the doctors, but she only has limited access this time so the more professional doctors could work over Dent. Once getting into the shower, he started it up to get rid of the morning grime off of his body. It wasn't long before he turned on the radio to listen to some music. But nothing seemed to be good at the moment, so he kept changing channels. Traffic is at a standstill on the Gotham Expressway with a truck full of eggs were turned over. A voice from the radio started getting the publisher to raise an eyebrow. Okay. Have no idea how that happened, but whatever. Naruto muttered as he was about to change the station, but something came up. This just in. Gotham police is investigating a series of near-fatal accidents by the riverfront. Initial reports that hundreds of Gothamites have inexplicably acting like total laughingfools. More details as they become available. The reporter said before he signed off and some music started playing. Sounds like a dirty April Fool's prank. What happened to the good old pranks of old? Naruto muttered as he was washing his hair before thinking about the supposed holiday. April Fool's Day was interesting to say the least. When traveling through Russia in his first year in this world, he learned about the holiday and thought it was a prankster's dream come true. So he ended up pulling some of his old pranks from back home, like breaking into this Russian mob compound owned by some group called Bratva or something, and dyed all of their clothing into bright colors. Yeah. It was not fun running like hell away from them with bullets being fired upon him. He was so damn lucky that he made it out alive, and that was the first time he learned to check the hallways for security cameras for future references. Though he does wonder if they still have that bounty placed on him or not. Should probably ask Kurama if I get the chance. He briefly thought before getting on to other stuff on the holiday. Supposedly his level of pranks were considered too extreme and could end up getting him either killed or put into prison. So, after that incident, he learned that he had to do small pranks and silly jokes that wouldn't be too bad to deal with. Along with the holidays supposite start with several theories. Some believe the first association between April 1st and playing tricks can be found in Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales from 1392. One passage called The Nun's Priest's Tale, it seemed to get many readers think the characters were talking about 32 days after March, which ended up landing on April 1st. Others believe that April Fool's Day was the result of a desire to celebrate the turning of the seasons around springtime. In fact, many cultures have historically held such celebrations around the beginning of April. Like some ancient Romans doing festivals around the end of March, Hindu festivals being held mid-March to celebrate spring's arrival, and some adoption situations of the new calendar system in its transitional period. It was just too damn complicated for the silver-haired youth at the time to fully understand, so he had no real desire to learn any further from there. Though Naruto did give some props to some Swiss farmers back in 1957, fooling thousands of people that there were such things as spaghetti noodle trees until they came out clean by the end of the day. Once finishing off his shower, he quickly changed into his attire for the day. Naruto was about to leave his loft when his eyes caught something from his patio window. He wondered what it was, so he walked onto his patio for a closer inspection to see a growing green cloud of smoke coming from the riverfront. That doesn't look good, Naruto muttered with narrowed eyes. He didn't know what was going on, but something didn't seem right about it. So, he quickly went into his Vanitas attire and brought out Kazekage before turning back to Isis staring blankly at him. Keep an eye at the place, Isis, and I'll throw in a tasty tuna for you to feast on. The only response he got from the green-eyed cat was a lick to her lips with a nod as Isis' eyes seemed to sparkle a little. Chuckled good kitty. And with that, Naruto closed the door to his patio and jumped off before riding Kazekage into Gotham to figure out what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, riverfront. The river broke from its slightly calmness, aside from the garbage barge passing through, as the armored truck was sinking deep into the watery depths before it stopped on the rock bed. If one would look up from the underwater scene, there would have been a miniature submarine attached to the garbage barge. Not long after the armored vehicle stopped moving, a hatch opened up from the sub and two figures came out before heading towards the truck. Once close enough, one of the figures pulled out an underwater torch and used it to help break the lock before opening its doors to reveal bags of money in golden bars. As the two figures were gathering what they can before starting the process of transporting the goods, something else was going on inside of the submarine. Gotham City is in the grip of insanity. Everywhere, people are turning into lunatics. The person on the radio said as a shadowy figure was listening to every word being said. Reports say that a wave of foolish hysteria is moving down 7th Avenue towards the financial district. He he he. Ha he ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Click my. Oh. My. Chuckles, I believe that's my cue. The person said as he had went to his console and picked up the radio. Punch, Judy. If you're getting this, then grab what you can down there and head on up. It's time for the show. Once hanging up the radio, the man went over to the periscope and waited for his lackeys to show up, all the while he was laughing to himself with how much fun this day will be. No, not there. Oh wait. The man said as he pressed a button near him. Oh, Captain Clown, dock over yonder, will ya? Thanks. Once hanging up, he looked through the periscope with glee before the hatch of the submarine opened up to signal the man's lackeys have come back. Punch and Judy. Perfect timing, we're about to hit Wall Street. So, get everything ready with your shopping carts. The now identified Punch and Judy nodded as they went towards the back of the submarine to gather their gear. From what lighting that could be seen inside of the vessel, the two men in question are large muscle-bound men dressed up in purple and green jester-like outfits with the sleeves ripped off to show their large arms. Both of them appeared to have white face paint over the visible skin of their appearance with red circles on their cheeks and their hair either dyed or painted on green. Once they were docked, the two men grabbed their designated face masks with smile spray painted on them before they pressed the button on the other hatch of the vessel to open up the doors to the surface. "Now remember where we parked, boys," the mysterious man said as the two large men grabbed their shopping carts and pushed their way up the ramps. It wasn't long for the man behind this operation walked into the surface with a large red grin on his face. He was a tall, thin-looking man with a sickly pale complexion on his narrow and sharp face. The dark coloring around his eyes made his insanely green eyes pop out to help match his plastered grin. His green hair was seemingly combed back, only for it to stick back up in a spiky mess. He wore a white button-up shirt with a green vest and black tight pants underneath a purple leather trench coat and black leather gloves. When the going gets tough, the tough goes shopping. Ha 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 ha. The man laughed out loud to his own joke before speaking out loud for anyone unfortunate to hear him. "Look out, Gotham. Joker's back in town. Hee hee ha 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 ha." As Joker, Punch and Judy were walking towards the financial district, they were greeted with the sounds of loud laughter filling the air, making the clown prince of crime smile even wider to see his gas truly working like he planned. As everyone was laughing their hides off, the three were cleaning out the various pedestrians of their money and jewels on hand before breaking into a few jewelry stores along the way. It was quite easy with everyone losing all of their other senses as they could only focus on the laughter. "Sigh, and who says that crime doesn't pay?" Joker said before letting out a few little fits of giggles to escape his lips. Batcave. Time has passed since the news reports this morning of hundreds of Gothamites being affected by the laughing epidemic coming from the waterfront. When Bruce Wayne was getting ready for the day, he had listened to the report while taking the shower. He would have taken a bath due to how stressful things have been the past several nights, but Alfred tried to prank him this morning by stating that he drew him a bath. Well, he drew one all right, but not one in the tub, but actually on a piece of paper. Not much of a good joke apparently. Anyways, after hearing of the incident, Bruce realized that the Joker has finally shown his face again after breaking out of Arkham around New Year's. No one knew when he would show up, but apparently, he wanted to come back when it's April Fool's Day. Wanting to bring an odd form of panic through Gotham in the form of mass laughter. So, Bruce cancelled all plans for the day and went straight into the Batcave to start working on what should be done. During this time, he had sent out a prototype drone to go over Gotham to record as much data as it could on the laughing gas. Airborne gas emanating from Riverfront District. Analysis: lengthy exposure to the gas will possibly result in permanent insanity. Other possible result would be suffocation and death. The Batcomputer sounded off as Batman was working on some equipment. Seems that it's indeed Joker's laughing gas. Batman said as he stopped working on his equipment and checked through the detailed analysis that wasn't sounded off. He must have improved it since the last time he used it. In the past experiences Bruce had to deal with the Joker's laughing gas, it only caused to be a temporary problem that could be solved through cleaner air to help ventilate the lungs and administer a few things here and there just in case. But it seemed that the deranged clown changed his concoction to make it possibly deadlier on a larger scale. Possibly categorizing this as not just a Joker gas, but a poison of sorts. A Joker venom if it seems appropriate to name it now. Once looking through the analysis, Bruce pressed the intercom button on the Batcomputer to call his faithful friend. Alfred. I had left the hex key upstairs in the den. Mind bringing it down, please? Oh, get it yourself. Put. What? Bruce thought, as that didn't seem right with Alfred at all. Must still be in that April Fool's gag going on and wants to possibly get a laugh out of him. So, he pressed the button again and called out to him. Very funny, Alfred, but I have no time to play. Soon the sounds of crashing and breaking could be heard on the other end, getting Bruce to get worried on what is going on. He didn't know what was going on until... Ha! Ha ha! Ha ha! Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Until he heard the laughter. Hearing that sound made Batman run out of the cave and into the house so he could try and find his longtime friend. He eventually found him in the study with various potted plants and small works of art broken, with the rest of the room being wrecked, with Alfred swinging around a broom. Laughter time for some spring cleaning, Alfred said as he kept on swinging the cleaning tool around in his joyous laughter before destroying more things in the room. Shit! The gas! Batman said as he covered his face with his cape before pulling out the gas mask he was working on earlier. He must have opened up the windows by accident. Once closing the windows in the study, he rushed towards his butler to stop him, but he moved out of the way and slipped onto the ground, clutching his sides as he continuously laughed himself to the brink of tears from how painful it was. Bruce soon remembered of what the gas analysis was from the Bat computer, making the playboy carry his butler into the Batcave and help relieve him of his problem before going out to save Gotham from this epidemic. Arkham Asylum. So, Ivy drawled out as she glared at the person in front of her cell. What does the new hero of Gotham want with little ol' me? I need your help, Pamela. Well, she's not in at the moment. She doesn't want to talk to you for the time being, so I decided to step in. From what Ivy just said, Naruto could tell something was up. What happened? Nothing of your concern, Vanitas. She yelled out in a hiss-like tone. I'll have to figure that out when I get the chance, he thought before speaking to the darker sister. Please, Ivy, I need your help. From where I'm standing, you need a miracle, the darker persona said with her arms crossed. I'm guessing you heard what's going on in Gotham right now, Vanitas said, making the changed woman nod in response. Yeah. Yes. If there is a certain big event going on, then this place goes under lockdown with every inmate taken back into their cells, Ivy stated as she paced back and forth inside of her cell. With it being a widespread form of Joker gas, why wouldn't this place go through such lengths if an inmate tries to use the opportunity to possibly escape? The disguised Uzumaki knew of this during a previous chat with Harley when discussing certain protocols in the asylum just in case of certain cases. Some would be mandatory lockdowns, others being light warnings, and others that she hasn't even experienced yet and doesn't wish to do so anytime soon. With what Naruto could tell on the last one was probably a big-time asylum breakout or something of the sort. Now one might wonder why Naruto's at the asylum in the first place. Well, he had been going throughout the city trying to help on the various accidents that occurred due to everyone losing their sanity. He had tried to blow away the gas, but it ended up spreading it further. Without any idea on how to possibly fix this, he was running out of ideas when he ended up hearing a familiar voice. A voice that he hadn't heard since gaining Lunar Rose, Yggdrasil. Flashback. Damn it! Naruto yelled out as he dodged out of the way from a speeding car and getting several people off of the road. He and his clone were trying to take care of things, but with how much chaos being ensued that it was really difficult to handle. This is getting out of hand. No shit, Sherlock! His clone yelled out as he threw daggers into people's clothing to keep them in place. Hey! Don't make me dispel you. And deal with all this crap by yourself? Yeah, right. Well, I don't know what to do to stop all of this. Might I suggest something? A voice called out from out of nowhere. What the? Who said that? Vanitas said as he and his clone looked around for the source, but couldn't find any. I did. The voice called out before the disguised Uzumaki felt a familiar weight in his hand. He looked down in confirmation that it was Lunar Rose in his hand, but that would only mean Yggdrasil? Hello, Naruto Uzumaki. The now identified ancient tree spoke via mental link from Lunar Rose. What the hell, Yggdrasil? The disguised publisher said as he glared at the scythe. You ignore my calls when I tried to contact you on asking why you guys made Pam sterile and I got nothing in return. but now, out of nowhere, you decide to contact me. What gives? I am sorry about that, Uzumaki, but some issues were taking place at the time of your calls and neither my brethren or I could answer back on your issue with your mate. The ancient tree spoke. But we will take care of that problem at a later time. I need to inform you on what's going on now. Knowing that trying to get that specific information on Pam's condition wouldn't be good now, it would be better with what Yggdrasil needs to inform him now. Alright, what's the problem? Whatever this gas is that's permeating the air is causing problems for the various plant and animal life. Both the parliaments of trees and limbs are worried on what this might do as a whole and we need your help in stopping this. Yggdrasil said in a worried tone. The parliament of trees and limbs? What are those? You mentioned the tree one before, but never explained it. The Parliament of Trees deals with the plant life on the planet while the Parliament of Limbs are our animal equivalents. I hope that at least sums it up a little. That's fine for now, but I would like to learn more about these parliaments at a later time. So, getting back on track, you said that both groups are worried on what's going on. Correct? Yes. And why would you need my help? Because you need to get your mate out of her shackles and help her to solve this issue. And what would she know on how to take care of this problem? She would know what to do. Yggdrasil vaguely said to the publisher. Once things are started, you'll need to bring out your scythe, connect with her to help out in the process and deal with what's taking advantage to this event. The ancient being said before ending the connection. That sounds rather ominous. Doesn't help on what he meant. Naruto said before he dispersed his scythe and summoned his motorcycle to head to Arkham while his clone remained to help take care of things. Flashback end. The champion of the green suddenly gained a realization and smirked at him. You are scared, aren't you? Of course, I am, for all of the people in Gotham. And I should trust you. Why? Because without your help, not only every plant in the city will die but also Naruto Uzumaki. She gritted her teeth at this and glared holes into the man in front of him. You lie. Naruto should be immune to that toxin wafting through the air. We made sure of that. What do you mean? He asked, only for her to scoff at him. Like I would tell the likes of you. But wouldn't you want to help the people of Gotham if he asked you to? The hero asked, getting her to pause and trying to have an inner debate with herself. And like I said before, that without your help, all plant life in the city will die. A few moments had passed before Ivy brought her focus back onto him with a glare in her eyes. Fine, we will help. But after this, we want to come back here so we can wait for Naruto. And why's that? He asked knowing what the answer was, but he had to keep up the act. Because he wanted to personally take us from this place and bring us into our home when it's our day to finally be released. She said to him as he nodded on the new information. Vanitas then used his phasing ability to pull Ivy out of her cell before using the device he procured from the security office to deactivate her power dampeners. In a force of habit, Ivy had rubbed her wrists and neck from the odd feeling of not having those cuffs on her. Before going any further, Naruto pulled out a blank card and wrote down what was going on and that Ivy will be brought back after things in Gotham were taken care of. Once that was done, he placed the card next to the power dampeners before the two of them made their way out of the building via phasing. So, about that miracle. Believe me or not, but when we were going through our transformation process, we had a lot of scenarios put into our head to know what to do if certain events were to occur. A lot of them were old or odd, but some we could be able to improvise if done correctly. Ivy said as she breathed in the somewhat fresh air. Which would be what exactly? Grabbing a sample and creating a spore to counteract the Joker gas. It's easy when you know how, along with knowing how to manipulate plants at a molecular level. She stated, making Naruto realize that was probably how she made him immune that one time, but we'll ask about it later. So could it be enough to protect the city? He asked as he summoned two Kazekage lances for them to ride on. He would have summoned one, But with Ivy's distaste towards Vanitas, it would be better for her to have one of her own. Theoretically yes, but I don't know if we could produce enough on our own. So where do you need to go exactly? He asked, since he might know why Yggdrasil had mentioned for him to be the extra help, but doesn't know for sure. The Botanical Gardens. They're the oldest plants in Gotham and they'll help me on what I need to do. Ivy said as she eyed the lance. What is that supposed to be? Your ride. Vanitas bluntly said to her, making her looking at him oddly. You don't expect me to actually ride that? I'll take it as slow as possible till we reach our destination. Unless you want to hold on to me. Hell no. She quickly said as she grabbed the weapon from him and sat on top of it. The only person I would rather hold on to was our beloved king. It wasn't long as both of them were sent into the air and went towards their destination. Riverfront. Hello, this is Summer Gleason and I'm in downtown Gotham where many corporate CEOs have gone stark raving mad. It would appear that the collapse of the stock market is now imminent. Now question remains, will April Fool's Day mark the end of Gotham? Or will Vanitas and Batman save the day from his terrible nightmare? Click. Well, the only things gaining now are the stock markets. Joker said as he turned off the radio in the submarine with a few giggles here and there to his own joke. He would have laughed more if the submarine-attached barge didn't violently shake to the point that the mad clown fell down onto his face. Groan, what the hell was that? He asked as he got up and went to the periscope to see what was going on. He kept turning around the scope to see anything out of the ordinary. Just water, seagulls, garbage, water, rocks, Batman, rocks, junk, water. Wait. Batman? Gah! Joker yelled out as the bat slammed his hand against the periscope to knock the homicidal clown off of his feet and onto his ass. He was going to get back up, but there was a sudden pull to the ship that made it not a great idea to get back up suddenly. Back onto the surface, the Dark Knight had been in a foul mood for the past hours that he had been trying to come up with a synthesized antidote to the new strain of Joker gas/venom. It was successful when he had gotten Alfred cured from its effects. It would take too much time to make more of the antidote with how widespread the epidemic was, so he needed to find the source and stop it from spreading. So, he had brought his Batboat to search for the Joker and found that the garbage barge was the source of the epidemic. He tied one of the towing cables he had against the barge and had his Batboat go through autopilot to move it away from the city as fast as it can go. Well. Joker's voice called out from behind as Batman had finalized the destination he had in mind to his boat. Look who's come to trash the place. A fitting setting for you, Joker. The Bat said as he looked towards the clown to see Judy, Punch and a clown captain behind him. Well, I just love to get down and dirty at times, Batsy. The man said with his ever-present grin. Now boys, it's time to play. The two large men nodded at their boss order as both ran towards the masked hero. One of them, will be Punch, threw a punch at the Bat, but it missed with him hitting a nearby broken fridge upon impact to cave it in a bit. Punch pulled out his fist and went to hit the hero again, but Batman kneed the man in the stomach before tossing him aside as Judy slammed towards the hero's back. When the hero tried to recover from the blow, he was grabbed and thrown into the air to hopefully get him into the water. That proved unsuccessful as the Batman grabbed a hold of a metallic pipe sticking out of the garbage and used it to swing around to kick the offending henchman. Once getting back onto the barge's floor, Batman had to move out of the way from Punch throwing a fist at him before slamming his arms towards the ground to cave in the metal below. Both of the large men threw punches and kicks at the hero as the Joker just sat back and watched the fight before him. He kept cheering his boys on as Batman sent 3 consecutive hard hits across Punch's face before moving out of the way from a throne stove. Judy and Punch then grabbed thick planks of wood from the pile of garbage and swung them around to hopefully hit the Bat. But in the end, they ended up hitting each other across their heads to knock them out cold for who knows how long. Well, aren't you the party pooper, Batman? The Joker said with a slight frown before it went back up. How about you take that mask off and we'll have loads of laughs to share? Ha 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 ha. I think not, Joker. The hero growled out as he marched his way towards the villain. As the fight was going on earlier, Captain Clown made his way towards the towing cable attached to the barge and somehow tore it with ease. With the release of tension, the Batboat went faster as it sped away from their present position, with the barge slowly coming to a halt. Seeing this happen in the corner of his eye, the Joker laughed a little. "How about you have some fun with our dear captain of our maiden voyage?" said Captain made his way towards the Bat in a walking pace as the Joker just sat on the canister at the start of the confrontation. When the Captain got closer, Batman jumped up into the air to deliver a downward punch to the man's face, only to hit metal instead. The hell? The hero thought as he held onto his hand in pain. But this seemed to cost him as the Captain grabbed a hold of him and hoisted him up into the air before spinning in a rapid pace. Batman tried to do something, but he was starting to feel too lightheaded to even try and fight back. "Well then," Joker started to say as he got off from his seat and dragged the canister towards the spinning Captain Clown. "It's time to take out the trash." He. In one swift motion, the Joker opened up the canister lid just as the Captain slammed the Bat into the container. Without waiting for the Bat to try and fight back, the deranged clown slammed the lid down and locked it up tightly before kicking the container several times. The vibrations emanating inside of the container seemed to make the dizziness and lightheadedness worse, with the ringing sounds amplifying the effects a bit. "Now it wouldn't be good to let you suffocate in there, Batsy," the Joker said in a baby-like tone before pulling out a razor-sharp knife from his jacket's pocket. "So, let's give you some air holes," he yelled out as he kept stabbing the container with his deranged laugh. At each punctured towards the container, the Batman was barely able to dodge the stabs, with only a few scrapings him in the process. Feeling satisfied with leaving enough holes in the container, he signaled for the Captain to come closer. The Captain responded and slowly made its way towards its master before stopping to await its next order. "Now El Capitan, time to give the ol' heave-ho," the Joker ordered, getting the Captain to nod at the request before grabbing the container and throwing it far into the river. Once making contact with the water, it started to sink towards the bottom of the river. Mocking gasped, "Oh no, it seems my air holes were water holes too. What a shame, hee ha 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 ha. Gotham Botanical Gardens. Here we are, Ivy. So what now?" the disguised Uzumaki said as he landed the both of them just outside of the place. It's been a long time since the both of them have come here on one of their last dates before the incident that made her who she became. It was one of her favorite places for her to go to on some of her days off, and he enjoyed it all the same whenever they went. From what he can tell in the look in her eye, she was having the same thoughts. Knocking out of her remembrance, she walked closer to the main tree of the garden. Look at her. She's been here since before man walked the earth. I can feel that she still holds great power. She spoke out before an angry tone took over. But she's weak. Poisoned after decades of pollution. So, she won't be able to fight off this gas on her own. Are there any others in the city? There aren't any others like her left. Not anymore. She stated as she walked closer to the tree and placed her hands on the trunk, with sorrow taking over her features. Man cutting them down, built over them, stopped them from reaching the sun. It's hard to see on how she was able to survive for all these years. It was hard for him to resist taking her into his embrace and telling her he's sorry. But he wouldn't know how she'll react on such a thing, and things will become complicated in the meantime. So for now he'll have to hold it off until such time. I've been meaning to ask this, but what gave you the idea that we could possibly help you in this epidemic? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Vanita said, making her scoff at this. Try me. A tree. A tree told you? She asked with a skeptical look. I didn't even know you could talk to trees. Naruto didn't get fazed by her tone of voice, of her thinking that he was an idiot or something, even though she should talk to plants. He shook his head on this before replying in full on this. Well, more specifically, an old tree named Yggdrasil. Once saying that name changed her features drastically to a shocked one before narrowing her eyes at him. Like I would believe that he would grace his presence onto you. Well, I did chat with him and he asked for my help to get you here. Among other vague things apparently. He thought since he was still confused on that tidbit. So, are you going to start this or what? Ivy didn't say anything as she kept her eyes on him and wanting to possibly know what is going on. Knowing that she won't get anything out anytime soon, the changed botanist turned around and got the trunk of the ancient tree to open up to grant her passage inside. Once it closed back up, Naruto saw the tree change with it starting to glow and flowers started to sprout from various parts of it. Well, I think it's time for my part now. The Nitas muttered as he summoned Lunar Rose and walked up to the tree before getting into a meditative pose. Wonder how long this will take? Just as he said that, he blacked out. Meanwhile, junkyard. Get ready boys, 'cause here it comes. Joker said as he flipped several switches on a control panel that he procured from Ace Chemicals that was filled with his concoction. This will give April Fools more smiles per gallon. He. Once the final switch has been flipped, the hoses that were connected to large containers came to life as Joker's concoction was sprayed onto the garbage barge. Punch and Judy kept the hoses in place as their boss had set it to full blast in hopes of emptying the containers for one last run. More would have been sent out if a batarang or two didn't cut the lines, causing the concoction to be sprayed all over the two henchmen. The Joker saw from the readings that something seemed wrong and ran over to his two lackeys to see what was going on. What the hell are you fools? Batman. How the hell did you get out of that container? Trade secret. Was all he said as he moved out of the way from Judy, making said man to fall into the water to end up washing the concoction off of him. Punch then came up from behind to knock the bat out, but he kept ducking and evading each of the throws. The hero got tired of this and caught one of the oncoming punches and used that momentum to throw Punch into the water. In an odd chance, Punch ended up landing on top of a recovering Judy to end up getting both of them dazed out. Especially since both of them smacked their heads against each other. Of course, this would happen. The Joker muttered before focusing his attention to the Batman. Oh, Captain Clown. Come over here and help out now. On the double. Hearing his master's command, Captain Clown came towards the Batman to subdue him like before, but the Bat came prepared this time. He saw a nearby lead pipe, grabbed it and swung hard against the disguised robot several times before running further into the junkyard. The disguised playboy knew the robot was too strong for him, so he needed to lure him to something that'll take care of the mechanical clown easily. Looking around for a possible solution, he glanced back to see Captain Clown gaining up on him. Acting fast, he slid onto the ground to get the robotic clown to crash against several broken cars to help buy him some time for his personal search. Not wanting to lose on the chase, Captain Clown grabbed a hold of one of the cars and threw it to the side with ease before continuing on with the chase. It wasn't long for the hero to find the solution to his current ordeal as he came across a car crusher. As he jumped onto the conveyor belt of the piece of machinery, the robotic clown grabbed a hold of his cape. It was then that Captain Clown started a tug-of-war of sorts with the bat-themed hero from the high to the low ground. Well, Batman. It seems that Captain Clown has grown quite attached to you, the Joker yelled out from the mechanical crane nearby. He seemed a tad winded, given the fact that he was running after them to see how his robotic henchman was faring against his longtime rival. The little tug-of-war continued as Batman was trying to get himself free from his cape. It would have been easier if he had clips to get it detached from himself, but he needs to cut himself loose. Once pulling out his batarang, he grabbed a hold of his cape and quickly dug into the material to get free. It was a little tough, but he managed to get free to run along the conveyor belt with Captain Clown climbing up and following its target. Once high enough, Batman started smacking the robot's head with the metallic pipe until its clown-like face caved in and revealed its true one with a Star Labs logo pasted onto the side. Seeing the logo made Batman realize that Joker must have stolen the piece of machinery prior to this event for some additional muscle. Well, it would be wasted once he was done with Captain Clown. Batman started to smack the stolen robot some more before hitting its leg joints to make it fall down into the compactor down below. Not wanting to waste a chance, the masked hero went to the side and pulled on the main lever of the machine and pressed several buttons to fully activate the machine. It did its primary function and crushed the stolen piece of technology into a small cube. "You killed Captain Clown?" The Joker yelled out from his placement as he pulled out a handgun from his inner jacket pocket before unloading its ammunition at the caped crusader before speaking to him again. "You killed Captain Clown. Do you have any idea how annoying it was trying to steal him from that lab? And just for that, I hope you enjoy this." He yelled out as he pulled on several levers that ended up dropping a large amount of garbage onto his foe in hopes of killing him. Batman somehow survived this as he jumped out of the way with some garbage landing on top of him. Once coming out from the small pile of filth, he saw the Joker run along the conveyor belt into the main building of the junkyard. Not wanting to lose sight of the deranged clown, he gave chase in hopes of catching up to him. After several minutes of running, Batman saw the Joker within his sights and was about to grab his jacket, but he jumped out of the way, making the hero to fall onto the conveyor belt. Once shaking himself off on the failed attempt, his eyes were soon greeted to a large vat of molten metal. Not wanting to die in such a fashion, the Bat jumped into the air and managed to grab a hold of a hanging bucket. With some struggle, the hero pulled himself up and got inside of the empty container. And just in time too, as the bucket was soon assaulted by bullets fired from the Joker along with several swinging cabled hooks. "I've always loved the crane game and shooting bats out of the barrel," the Joker said out loud as he laughed while he continued with his assault. Batman grew tired of this and got back up from his crouched position to grab a hold of one of the hooks and swung his way towards the clown. He was just about to make it, but the Joker pulled a lever and caused the piece of machinery to drop in hopes of the Bat to fall to his doom. Unfortunately for him, Batman leapt off of the falling hook and landed onto a variety of gears and worked his way up to the stable catwalk. Seeing that his foe was getting closer, the Joker ran off and jumped into a hole with Batman not far behind. "Wee-ee-ee." The Joker sounded out as he rode along the makeshift slide with the Batman following behind him. With the exit soon approaching, he spread out his arms and managed to grab a hold of the chain rope before swinging upwards to the catwalk above. "Hot damn, that was fun. I must go again. Hee hee hee." It wasn't long for the Batman to realize where the exit will lead to. So, he placed his hands and feet onto the metal walls to slow him down, but it didn't slow him down quick enough and he almost fell down into the incinerator below. He tried to pull himself up, but the heat of the room was making it difficult to do so. "Justice is served, hot Batman, and you'll burn for what you've done to my precious Captain Clown," the deranged clown yelled out as he started firing upon the hero from his position. But he kept missing due to sweat hitting his eyes, making it hard to properly aim. As the clown kept on missing, Batman tried to pull himself up but ended up slipping and almost fell to a fiery death. Luckily, at the last moment, he fired his grappling gun into the air and it caught onto the metal railing above and zip-lined towards it. Once on stable ground once again, he stalked towards the criminal with a heated glare. "Justice will be served, Joker, for all of the lives you have possibly taken this day," Batman said as he ended up dodging several razor-sharp playing cards at him. "So, clean up your act." "Wait. Did I just hear that right?" the Joker asked in bewilderment. "You, Batman, finally told a joke? Oh, good God, it finally happened. Ha 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 ha." In his momentary laughter, he threw more cards at the hero, but he dodged each and every one before catching one in his hands. The Joker then pulled out his gun and was ready to fire again with a fresh clip, but one of his playing cards was thrown right into the barrel to block the bullets. Seeing as his remaining weapon was now useless, he ran off to possibly escape and fight again on another day. But his foot got caught from some rope and ended up tripping over the railing to end up head first into the inferno below. The criminal thought he was going to die this day, but a snap came from above to show that the Joker wasn't going any further. "Batman!" the deranged clown yelled out. You wouldn't let me fry, would you? There was no immediate response as Batman adopted a mocking thinking pose and spoke out with a smirk on his face. Maybe. Not funny. Naruto's mindscape. Coming to this place has always been an odd occurrence in the past, from training, searching and exploring. It never really made sense to the publisher when it dealt with figuring out this place's mysteries with him only scratching a little bit of the surface. With said scratch, it came up when he dived into Pam's heart on that one incident that made him see many of her memories. Naruto would have liked to possibly experience that again, but it hasn't really occurred ever since. For example, he woke up on Selena's heart platform after the both of them got together that one night, but he didn't dive into it per se. Didn't get the chance to see any of her memories to fully connect with her. Naruto just woke up here and didn't know what to do exactly, just inspected her heart platform and just like Pam's, it was pretty interesting on the design. It was mostly a purple-colored background with a magenta-like color for the border. There were many circles framing an image of Gotham's landscape, if he had it correctly, switching between dancing poses, cat icons and varying items that looked like jewels and artwork. Above Selena, who was in her Catwoman attire minus the mask, was another set of circles with portrait images of Shizune, Isis, and some woman he doesn't know. But from what he could tell from some physical similarities, Naruto guessed the woman was Selena's sister Maggie. But let's get back on track on what's currently going on here. After Naruto went into his meditative position by the ancient tree, he woke up in a blinding light before it died down to have him realize he's back in this place. He inspected the platform below him and saw that it had a picture of the same tree in the waking world on a green background. Some additional differences were present with it being more integrated on the tree's appearance to indicate it being in its prime from how exotic it truly was. After his little inspection, Naruto looked around for a few moments before calling out. Yggdrasil. Are you there? There was no response from the ancient tree of the green, only the slight echo from the distance from Naruto's call. Yggdrasil. I am here, young sapling. The ancient tree spoke out from the void, making Naruto breathe out a little into his helmet. I'm glad you have brought Ivy to start the process. You're welcome, but I need to know what's going on. You said earlier that something was coming to take advantage in what's happening in Gotham right now. I'll explain later, young one, but they are already here. Insert fragments of sorrow extended. The warning was rather sudden as several spots on the platform started to burst to the surface. From what the masked publisher saw, they were oddly gray-colored dwarves with pot bellies, skinny limbs and large bulbous heads that were glowing blue. They screeched a little before lunging at the black and white themed hero with their fungal-looking hands. Before they could get any closer, Naruto summoned Lunar Rose and swung his weapon around to knock the gray men away from him before going after them. He slashed at each of them in either pinwheel motions or simple slashes. It didn't matter as these fungal-looking beings were pretty resilient until they were finally cut down into nothing. Once looking around for any other foes, after the previous ones bursted into odd-looking smoke, Naruto was going to call out to Yggdrasil when he heard it. Click click groan click click. The sound was rather sudden as Naruto something climb up from the edge of the platform and onto the stable ground. From what he was seeing, the being looked like a disfigured-looking person with shredding clothing and fungus-looking growths appearing on several places on the body. Even the face had those growths, and the only remaining thing that was human about it was the one visible eye and the jagged teeth present. It screeched and clicked again before running at the masked publisher, causing him to slash at the odd creature. Without him realizing, several more of those things started to climb up the platform and started coming after him in small groups. They were rather persistent in trying to harm him while he was mowing them down. Somehow one was lucky to grab a hold of him and tried to take a bit out of him, but Naruto struggled free and kicked the fungal being away before cutting its head off. As the last of them were done and over with, a stained glass pathway started to form from the side of the platform. Well done, Naruto Uzumaki. Yggdrasil said from the void. You have done well against some forces of the gray. What were they, by the way? Naruto asked the ancient being. Were they the beings that you tried to warn me about? Some of them, yes, they were. The Grey has sent forces to try to seize the opportunity with the gas in the waking world to destroy one of the last ancient trees in your region. The tree spoke out to the human. But you must hurry, they must not take this tree from us. Without giving a response, Naruto ran onto the pathway to see where it would take him. It didn't take long for some of those gray fungal beings to burst out of the pathway to block his way, but the scythe wielder did quick work with them. More and more of them started to come out along the way that they started to mob up against him in droves. These fungal things are gonna be very annoying, he thought as he slashed several at a time in the confined space. It's like they are a mob or something. Maybe I should call them that, fungal mobs. He eventually slashed through the last of the fungal mob before his foot came in contact with a darkened platform before it lit up. Like the previous platform, it was the same design of the tree's prime, but this one had a yellow background instead of green. If there was going to be theme with this, then at least he wouldn't have to worry as he heard that noise again. Groan click click. To indicate that more of these gray forces were showing up. And they did as more fungal humans crawled up onto the platform and screeched out at him like before. Naruto kept his guard up this time so none of these things won't surprise him like the last one. He'd seen enough zombie flicks to stay away from zombie-looking mouths and didn't want to risk this healing factor of his to fix the problem. So, he swung Lunar Rose around quickly to drive some of these clickers back a bit before he used a bit of speed to teleport behind each of them and slashed at their backs. This caused them hard as they screeched and groaned louder before he severed their heads from their bodies. More clickers started to crawl from the darkness and onto the platform, but Naruto wasn't having any of that as he threw several cards at them to explode on impact. Another pathway soon formed itself to the platform, but without any weight this time more of those fungal mobs came out of the glass-like ground and came at him. It was getting a little repetitive to the point that Naruto jumped above them and ran past them to get onto the next platform with the fungal mobs following after him. The moment Naruto's boot came in contact with the darkened platform, he heard more clickers crying out before coming up in smaller droves to possibly box him in. Naruto kept doing his process over and over again of dodging the clickers before slashing and kicking them off of the ledge into the darkness below. At the corner of his eye, he saw the various fungal mobs running up the pathway with some growing out of the reddish-orange platform. Not wanting to deal with them again, he threw several cards onto the ground in front of them to explode to possibly be rid of them. All that he wants to do now is be rid of them and hopefully get things taken care of on his end so Ivy can finish her task. He didn't bother looking back if they were gone or not as he kept running forward to complete his part of the task. He heard the clickers coming from ahead this time as they lunged at him. He evaded this tactic by sliding underneath one of them before doing a horizontal spin in the confined space. Other ones kept coming out from the darkness in front of him as he threw several exploding cards in their wake before running towards the sudden chaos to make quick work out of them. Once landing onto the platform, it lighted up to reveal its darkened blue appearance and he expected to have more enemies coming up from the sides of the platform. All that he heard was some scuffling from behind, making him turn around to see a lot of the fungal mobs staggering up the pathways. Seriously? He asked in bewilderment as he readied himself. Those guys didn't die from before. Naruto walked further back so that he could just take care of all of them once they were on the platform. It was a bright idea at first, before he saw odd fungal threads coming out of their heads and connecting with each other as they were getting closer to his position. All of a sudden, they seemed to all mess into each other to form one giant version of itself, making the scythe wielder to have a twitch to his eye. Oh, for fuck's sake! Naruto yelled out as it stomped its way towards his position. He had to teleport out of the way as it jumped up a bit to come back down onto the rose petals where he was previously at. Seeing as it missed its target, the large fungal mob swung around to possibly grab a hold of Naruto, but he rolled out of the way before slashing its legs. Rarh had cried out in pain as it stomped its feet onto the blue platform before running after him in the small space. Naruto had to dodge out of the way yet again as he kept slashing at the monstrosity before him. In this time, the large fungal mob soon grew its hair out in each passing moment, making Naruto not like what might come up. So, without not wanting to know what it was going to do next, Naruto jumped into the air and slashed at the fungal beast's bulbous head several times to sever most of its hairs in the process while leaving deep gashes into its mass. Once landing on the ground, Naruto had to recover quickly during the little time he had as the monster held its head in agony before coming at the scythe wielder once again.
Time to end this.
The hero muttered as he put a lot of strength into this last swing as he jumped into the air and made an upward slash towards the monster's neck to finally end it. It was successful as the body fell onto the platform before going up in an odd spore-like smoke as the head fell into the darkness below.
Phew, that was one hell of a run.
Naruto said as he slammed his scythe onto the platform to give himself something to lean onto as he wanted to catch his breath. Once that was done, a pathway started to manifest itself as Naruto eyed it carefully. I just hope I can be done with this soon. He picked up Lunar Rose and carefully made his way through the pathway to what could hopefully be the last he'll be dealing with.
There was nothing that has come up on the last bit of the trek.
No fungal mobs or clickers, which was good and all, but it left a bad feeling in his stomach that something was right ahead of him. The moment his boots came in contact with the last platform, it lighted up in an array of colors to reveal the same design as before of the ancient tree in its prime. But what made it more unique this time was the mixture of the previous platform backgrounds were meshed together into this much larger area. With the reds, oranges, yellows, greens and blues put together into a nice ordinate look that made all of the previous themes work together well.
Insert Dark Beast Parl extended. Bang. The hell?
Naruto thought out loud on the sudden sound.
He looked around to see where it was coming from.
It was hard to tell with it sounding like it came from everywhere at once.
Bang. There it is again.
He said as he got himself at the ready for what might be coming.
Bang. Where is it?
The scythe wielder said as he kept on looking.
It can't be above. I think.
Or the sides.
Then it must be. Bang screech. Below. As that was called out on the realization.
A large hand came up from the edge with a resulting bang before another hand came out and did the same action as before. Soon a large figure pulled itself up from the darkness, in a clattering mess, to get Naruto to see what it was once it stood up on its 4 legs. It was a skeletal-looking beast with patches of flesh and fur on every other spot. Its human-like skull was grotesque with the sunken flesh hugging the bone and revealing the sharpened teeth. This made things hard to tell what kind of creature this was before its demise and became this chimera zombie of sorts that was practically towering over him.
Ruo-o-o-hea-har-har.
The monstrosity screeched/yelled out as various sparks of electricity came from its form before it slammed its hands onto the platform to shake it up. Naruto had to try and keep himself steady, but he had to move out of the way when the beast swiped its electrified claws at him. The hero had to swing his weapon to parry some of the oncoming blows that he couldn't dodge from. Once it made contact, it was hard to fully keep his ground with how strong the beast was pushing. It soon wrapped its other hand around his form and threw him up in the air to try and smack him across the darkness, but he wouldn't let that happen from what he could tell. So, at the last moment, he swung his scythe at the offending hand to smack it away before cutting the monster's face a bit with a lot of his strength.
Ruahahar!
It yelled out as soon glared at the hero once it regained his bearings. It lunged at him with a spark-like dash, but Naruto dodged out of the way before slashing its frontal leg. This action caused the monster to fall down and end up falling over the edge of the platform.
I hope that got rid of it. Naruto said as he had to catch a few breaths. Bang bang bang. Spoke too soon.
He yelled out before the pillar shook some more, seeing the monster leap up with a large ball of lightning in its mouth and fired at him.
Shit!
Naruto said as he needed to dodge out of the way, but there was no time with how big that ball of energy was. So, he thought of what he could only do by throwing Lunar Rose at the lightning ball with a lot of built-up energy. Hope you like this. Once throwing the weapon, it gave out a saw-like sound in the air before it came in contact with the lightning ball. Two forces met with each other, resulting in a massive explosion. When the smoke somewhat cleared, Lunar Rose landed onto the ground before the monster as it landed hard. It struggled to move, but it wasn't getting up that quickly. Not wanting to lose his chance, Naruto ran towards the beast as he picked up Lunar Rose before slashing the monster's head in various strikes. Some were powerful swings and some were pinwheel-style motions, but either way, they were being very effective. Soon several sparks of electricity sprang to life on its form, making Naruto deliver a few more blows before jumping away from the beast. The monster got back onto its hands and feet as power started to get charged up throughout its form before it released it all at once as it gave out a mighty roar like screech.
It was rather deafening if one wasn't prepared on the obvious sign.
The resulting discharge of power covered part of the platform with Naruto being in the safer area of it. The monster soon turned its grotesque head back at him and snarled before coming at him again with its electrified hands. Knowing where this was going, Naruto made a Void Rasengan in his hand and quickly fired onto the monster's face to knock it off its path. It didn't seem to like it, but Naruto didn't care as he kept firing more and more Void Rasengans at the monster. But it seems that the electricity coming off of its fur was dampening some of the void blasts onto its being, getting Naruto to realize that physical attacks are the only way to defeat this beast. With not wanting to deal more on Naruto's attacks, it lunged at him once again. Like before, the hero slashed its other arm in the same fashion, causing it to fall and slide off of the platform. Naruto soon guessed that the beast will maybe do the same trick like last time, making him ready for what is coming.
Bang bang bang.
I'm ready for you this time, you rotten sack of bones. He yelled out as he saw the monster leap up into the air like before with a large ball of electricity before firing it. Naruto tossed Lunar Rose at the ball of energy with more strength into it so it'll get to the blast faster and possibly harm the monster a whole lot more. The results were the same as before as the scythe came clattering down onto the platform with the beast landing on it with a loud thud. Naruto dashed towards his weapon and quickly swung his weapon at the monster's head to deal more and more damage. With each swing he was delivering, he was seeing more of its skull cracking and rotten brain being revealed.
There was just enough room made for Naruto to try to end this now.
So, he focused a lot of his void power into his hand with the scythe, keeping the gap open as much as possible before slamming his void mini Rasen Shuriken into it. The results were instantaneous as the attack grinded through the skull and destroyed the brain on impact. The monster gave out a screeching sound before it started to finally die out. Once pulling the scythe out of the monster's head, the creature started to crumble into dust and fade away into the darkness.
Damn. That was
really tough,
Naruto said as he was catching his breath.
He didn't know if he was done or not, but the answer was soon given to him with the platform starting to grow brighter and brighter into a blinding light.
Waking world.
Naruto soon woke up with a gasp as he didn't know how long he was in his mindscape. It took him several moments to get his breathing back in order before looking around to see if he and Ivy did it. Apparently, he did, as everything was a bit quiet without the sounds of laughter and chaos going around, along with the green gas being replaced by faint red specks of light.
Well, I think we did it,
he said as he got up and dusted himself off before hearing the tree behind him opening up. The masked Uzumaki was then presented with the sight of Ivy looking rather winded as she stepped outside. She stumbled a little and was going to fall down if it wasn't for Naruto to grab a hold of her.
Hey! Take it easy, Ivy,
he said before letting out a little chuckle.
Well, congrats, you saved the day.
Hooray! Ivy dryly said as she soon glared at the masked hero.
Don't touch me, Vanitas.
Like I said before, only our beloved king can touch us.
Yeah.
Vanitas said with a roll in his eyes before getting her to stand back up.
Well, let's get you two back to Arkham before things get hectic.
Let's.
Was all she said before the masked publisher soon summoned two Kazekage lances and helped her get onto the weapon.
Once she was steady enough, they took off into the sky at a slow pace while seeing the nice spectacle below of the sun shining upon the faint red specks of light. At least for the time being, from up above, the dirty city down below looked a whole lot better.
Chapter 19, Let's Have a Tea Party.
This is Summer Gleason coming to you live from Gotham's Botanical Garden, where minutes ago, the main attraction of the garden opened up its ancient flower pods after God knows how many years. After this happened, red spores were shot into the air before it started to dissipate the gas epidemic. We honestly don't know what caused this to happen, but... Wait. What's that? A hand shot out into the view of the camera. What's what, Joe? Summer asked her cameraman. Joe didn't give her a verbal response, but she followed where he was roughly pointing towards to see a woman stepping out of the tree looking rather exhausted and looked like she was falling over. She was just about to do so when the hero, Vanitas, caught her and helped her back up. The cameraman and reporter duo started running in hopes of catching the two to see what went on, but they somehow flew into the air on metallic poles. Damn! Summer muttered in disappointment on her face. Well, it seems that we somewhat know now who saved all of us in Gotham, but several questions have now come to mind. Who was that woman? Is she a metahuman? Why was Vanitas here while some stable people reported him being all across the city helping citizens out? And what did that woman do exactly? Well, my guess is as good as your people. This is Summer Gleason, signing out. This was what the Batcomputer recorded hours ago by Alfred, when he was stable enough to move about once the synthesized antidote cured him of the Joker venom. He had the news channel on to see what was happening in Gotham while Batman was taking care of Joker. While this was going on, the former British secret agent was also monitoring the systems on how much longer the larger antidote would be made before being sent out via Batplane. Alfred eventually got word that his charge was successful in apprehending the crazed clown. After that message came through, the antidote was just about finished when the news report came in that the Joker epidemic was over. He didn't know what was going on, but he immediately recorded the news coverage so his longtime charge could look further into this. When Bruce got back from handing Joker back over to Arkham, he was filled in on the details while looking over the recorded news coverage. So, were you able to figure out who that mysterious woman was, sir? Mr. Pennyworth asked as he brought Bruce a small meal. The playboy was going to take a shower once he got back, but once getting word on the details he held it off until he figured out what happened. Yes. Bruce simply said as he typed several commands onto his keyboard to zoom into the freezed frame and magnified it. Once the picture was cleared up a bit, it showed a rough image of Pamela Isley. Or more accurate, her darker sister Poison Ivy, given the skin tone and vine-like tattoos. So, it seems that Ms. Ivy was able to save the day through a very noble act. Alfred commented in realization. Though it seems that it took a lot out of her. Indeed, it has, Alfred. Though I guess how Ivy got out of Arkham. With Vanitas, obviously. The butler said once, placing the food next to the dark-haired billionaire. With what you told me on his powers you know so far, I'm guessing he pulled her out of her isolation cell. For the obvious answer, Bruce typed another set of commands to pull up security footage from Arkham that was set in front of Pamela's cell. There the two saw the feat of Vanitas phasing Ivy out of her cell and deactivating her collar before writing a note that he'll return the metahuman after this event was over. The hero kept his promise and brought her back later, with said woman seeming pleased to be back in her cell. One would think that the sight to be off of an Arkham inmate to be back in their cell, but from what Naruto told him was that Pam/Ivy wanted to properly leave the asylum with their boyfriend. It was a good reason, and he hoped that if people realized that Ivy was the hero that it could bring her into a good light than from the hidden event that went on when she abducted those industrialists. He'll probably need to stop on by Arkham and check on Pam/Ivy to learn what happened earlier and what they did to save the city. That will probably be for another time. Bruce thought as he was eating his meal. For now, I need to shower, badly. I'm probably caked in garbage and soot. Few days later, Wayne Enterprises. Inside of a dimly lighted laboratory, a man was writing through a series of notes on hand before tinkering on several devices. It didn't take much longer before the man felt satisfied enough with his work to possibly start the next phase of his work. Opening up the cage near him, he plucked out one lab rat at a time and strapped something onto their heads before putting each of them back into the cage. Once his little task was done, he saw each of the lab rats wear little metallic fezzes as they scrambled about in their little home.
Alrighty then.
The man muttered as he pulled out an object from his desk. Let's see if this works. Opening up the cage once again, he had set down a miniature table before placing a little tea set onto the little piece of furniture.
With his hand cleared from them, the rats behaved like they normally did, and one of them knocked over some of the cups by accident.
The man sighed out a little on the display before opening the cage once more to fix up the table set. Such table manners. The man spoke as his hand left the cage before it grabbed a hold of a red metallic band on the table. With its cool outer texture in his hand, he placed it around his head to feel some of the little electrodes come in contact with his skin and hair.
Perhaps I can make you lot act a bit more civilized.
Once that was said, he focused his mind onto the lab rats. The band around his head started to glow a little to show it was activating.
It wasn't long until the metallic fezzes lighted up to get the rats to freeze up on their current actions.
From there, they soon walked over to the table set, started pouring tea into each other's little cups and drunk from them.
Yes. 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 Bravo.
The man cried out as he felt truly delighted in how his hard work has been paid off. They all laughed when I said that I'd find a way to tap into another creature's mind. He pulled out the band off of his head as it snagged onto some of his hairs.
Ow. Ow. Need to possibly fix the band a little or clean up my hair more so the band won't pull anymore. But nonetheless, with this band and electrodes, I could possibly control anything.
For who might this man be exactly? He is Dr. Jervis Tech, a neuroscientist working for Wayne Enterprises. Jervis is a lanky-looking man in his early 30s with shaggy shoulder-length brown hair with a small goatee surrounding his mouth. He was currently wearing a lab coat over his small attire of a white button-up shirt with dark pants and shoes. With what he was currently working on, Jervis had been hoping to improve the brain's potential and figuring out what the true capacities were. He had studied a lot on this work with various journals and studies done on the human mind from the analytical left and creative right, parts adapting to loss of function, the current capacity theories of people only truly using 10% of the brain, etc. He had to read them all to get a better idea on what to do exactly. But as he was working on this latest project of his for the company, Jervis started to come up with revolutionary ideas on brain chemistry and free will. He theorized that all of a person's emotions and loyalties could be altered and even controlled with the right chemicals. Aside from that, Jervis had even looked into the 3 forms of brainwashing: persuasive, educational and suggestive, to get a better understanding on a mind function. With persuasive, or operant conditioning as it's technically termed, it's just basic things of learning right from wrong and getting people's behaviors to change on certain rewards and punishments. Behaviors aren't different, but expectations are like bribing someone for something that is against their morals. They know that things aren't right, but they are getting rewarded in the end and every time they possibly expect when breaking their moral code. With the educational method, it's quite drastic, with torture and isolation working to alter how the mind thinks and feels. Literally reprogramming the concepts of right and wrong in the human mind. Taking weeks or months for someone to be affected by this method, which is where cults and the like indoctrinate people over the course of years until they are asked to fully comply with different tasks out of their free will. With suggestive, or hypnotism as others actually know it as, deals with having one's mind be opened to become more focused and attentive while being less distractible. Making a person look back if they can't remember a certain event and be able to eventually remember every detail. Getting a person to possibly do certain acts that a conscious mind wouldn't really do by giving simple commands to people. It even gets people to sometimes lose their sense of will if the hypnosis is strong enough. Each of these were fascinating for Jervis and helped him get further into his research into what he has been able to do thus far. By manipulating neurons and brainwaves, thus changing the person's brain chemistry, one could manipulate a person's actions and thoughts. So, in the end, he was able to fully create the band and electrodes to possibly excel his field of work. He could go far with these. He could. Knock, 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 knock. Yes, who is it? Jervis called out as he snapped out of his exciting trance.
The door opened up to reveal a blonde-haired, blue-eyed co-worker in the Wayne Enterprises division as a secretary named Alice Pleasance. Seeing her coming in made the neuroscientist fumble a little as he ended up hiding away his headband on habit. "Hey Alice, cough, what a pleasant surprise." Not noticing his smile towards her, she just fumbly waved him off with her eyes focused towards the doorway. Yeah. Look busy, Jervis. Bosses are here." Hearing this, the scientist then scurried towards his work and covered up the lab rats as Alice called out, "DRICates, Mr. Wayne." Once he was done, he saw said individuals walk towards him and saw Alice mouth to him, "Good luck. Bruce, I hope you remember Dr. Jervis Tech." Dr. Cates said as she introduced the brown-haired neuroscientist. She's a redhead woman in her late 30s in a standard blue business suit attire with glasses and her hair tied back. "Why, of course," Bruce said with a small smile as he shook the neuroscientist's hand. "I've read your proposal on using microchips to enhance the brain's potential. It sounds really intriguing." Thank you, Mr. Wayne," Jervis said with a small stutter. Always shy and trying to open up was pretty noticeable to others, but a lot of people didn't mind. Boosting the M-mind and helping out through certain causes could help out a lot of people if needed. Like amnesia patients to possibly remember who they originally were. It's only the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure. Smiling at this information, Bruce decided to ask the obvious thing on his mind. "I was wondering if you have a working prototype at the moment. I was hoping I could see it in action when possible." When hearing this, Jervis fiddled around with his fingers for a few moments as his mind quickly went through if he wanted to show Mr. Wayne what he had so far or not. In the end, he lied. I am sorry, sir, but the prototype isn't ready yet. Tried it out earlier and there are some kinks I need to work out before I could possibly present it to you." Tech. I think we owe our employer and founder, Mr. Wayne, a little more than lame excuses," Dr. Cates said, making the neuroscientist look a little downcast. "Sorry." "It's all right, Dr. Cates. He's a valued member of our research team," Mr. Wayne said to his employee's defense. "I'm sure we can spare him more time." "As you say, Bruce." Thank you, sir," Jervis quietly said as Dr. Cates and Mr. Wayne walked out of his lab. That was until his female boss poked her head back in with a slight glare. "You got off easy this time, Tech, but heads could roll if you slip up again," Dr. Cates said before leaving to catch up with Mr. Wayne for other work. Once the coast was clear, Jervis to release the deep breath he unconsciously held as he rubbed his head in frustration. After a few more moments, he decided to get out to possibly clear his head from all this mess he was dealing with. He just wished things could be easier for him. "Hey, cheer up, Jervis," Alice said to the neuroscientist as he walked past her desk. "She's always like that whenever the big boss shows up. Mr. Wayne knows what you mean to the company." Sometimes, Alice, I think you're the only one to understand me," he said to her with some relief, making her giggle a little that he found rather cute. "Yeah, well that's what my boyfriend keeps telling me whenever my day feels down in the muck." "Boyfriend?" he thought as he widened his eyes a little and ended up seeing the framed photo and a rose on her desk. When seeing such a thing, he tightened his fists while grinding his teeth a little. "I guess I'm lucky to have two such amazing men in my life," Alice said as she got up from her desk. "Well, I'll see you after lunch, Jervis." He waved her goodbye, even though it's for a short time. Once she walked around the corner, the neuroscientist harshly glared at the framed photo on her desk before slamming it face down. Jervis needed to unwind his head a little with the new fact that she only considers him a dear friend. So, Jervis took a break in his lab by opening up his copy of American McGee's Alice to read its wonders, but his mind kept coming back to his sweet Alice. She was so beautiful and innocent that made his heart flutter whenever he was around her. He had hoped to pursue her for some time now, but with his nervous and shy attitude he couldn't have the guts to ask her out. But it seems that he was too late, that she was in a relationship for who knows how long.
It's just that she reminded him so much of his late sister, who also had the same given name. His sister was so full of life and he loved her dearly. They did a lot together as children and even reacted scenes from the Alice in Wonderland novels from Lewis Carroll since those were their favorites. Alice portrayed Alice, obviously, while he would mostly portray the Mad Hatter, as the two would sometimes have loads of tea parties whenever they had any free time. To really get into their roles, they had studied hypnotism to possibly get more integrated with their favorite characters. It was such a joyous time for the two of them. That was until one day, during one of their playtimes in the front yard of their home. Alice ran onto the road to catch their pet cat named Bandersnatch, and the two of them were ran over by a delivery truck. It was a tragic day for him and his family that things could never be the same ever since. Of course, as years passed, Jervis got more closed off and had a hard time making friends. Just focused on work and couldn't do anything else for obvious reasons. But when getting into Wayne Enterprises, he met the blonde secretary and he ended up falling in love with her. But of course, intellectually, I know it's all wrong. He muttered to himself as he used his headband to make the mice bring him a cup of tea to help calm his nerves while reading his book. She's got a boyfriend, after all. Sigh, it's better to withdraw like a gentleman and forget her. Turn my heart onto other pursuits. He kept on drinking his tea and focusing his eyes into the book, but his mind kept going back onto the blonde secretary. Her sweet smile coming into the forefront of his mind before it shifted to the framed photo on her desk. Jervis stopped his current actions as his eyes started to narrow before he threw his cup to the other side of the room, making it clutter on the floor. Never! The neuroscientist yelled out as he slammed his fists onto the nearby table, startling the mice in the process. Oh, I'm sorry little ones, but look at these. He pulled out ordinary white cards from his lab pocket before presenting them to his lab rats. I've already started working on circuitry cards powerful enough to control a human brain. I just needed to see if your little test run earlier was a success before I continued working on these ones. Chuckles, it would be so easy to make her forget her boorish beau and love me. Sigh, but that would reduce her to a soulless shell. No. 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 Not my sweet Alice. It's completely hopeless. His self-debating was interrupted when he heard the sounds of crying coming from outside of the lab. Being curious as he may be, he decided to check out what's going on exactly. The sounds of crying got a little louder when he got closer to the break room to end up hearing someone else in there. Hey, it's going to be all right, Alice. Isn't that Dr. Cates? Jervis thought as he leaned against the wall so he wouldn't be noticed. And Alice is crying? What happened to my sweet Alice? I just wanted to talk about where our relationship was going during lunch and Billy got so defensive. The secretary cried out as she was bawling her eyes out. Sigh, classic male fear of commitment. And the next thing I knew, we were shouting, screaming, and saying we never wanted to see each other again. Alice said as she tried to keep herself together. Unbeknownst to either of the female co-workers, Jervis' eyes and mouth widened enough to belong in the leagues of the Cheshire Cat. He quietly ran to his lab before slamming the door behind him. With what he had just heard had possibly lifted up his spirits inconsiderably, despite the current situation to his sweet Alice, but he couldn't contain his joy any longer. Oh Frabius Day! Call Lou! Calais! Jervis yelled out as he let out several chuckles in his wake. Now she's mine for the asking and I didn't have to do anything to separate them. I'll sweep her off of her feet, treat her to a night on the town and... He stopped mid-speech when his eyes landed upon the poster of Alice having a tea party with the Mad Hatter, the March Hare and the Dormouse. And nothing. Oh, what could a beautiful girl like her see in me? How can I impress her? Jervis' eyes wandered through the lab until they landed upon his headband and the circuitry cards on his lab table. Soon various ideas started to come into his mind as a grin started to form. Chuckles, oh how indeed. Naruto's office. So, aside from you and Shizen sightseeing some areas in China, how's the trip so far? Naruto asked over the phone as he was going over several documents in his daily workload.
It's doing quite well actually.
We were able to secure a good amount of land for the wildlife preserve. Though I wish the negotiations would have gone better.
Yeah, I bet. So, was there anything interesting that happened while we were gone?
Thinking for a quick moment, he might as well tell her since it would be common knowledge once coming back.
Well, the day after you left, Joker came back into Gotham and caused a gas epidemic. Tell me you're joking. I'm not Selina.
You'll even hear about it once you're back in time for your meeting with your parole officer. He said to her as he leaned back in his chair. I still wonder why you went on this trip when it's too close for your monthly parole meeting.
For the wildlife preservation in a remote area in China, of course. She defensively said.
It needed to be taken care of as quickly as possible, and you know how much I care for that.
I know, honey. But aside from that, are you and Isis alright? Also, how's Harley and Pam?
Isis and I were fine, Selina. When the epidemic hit, I stayed with Isis in the loft with it being airtight so no gas could come through.
Sigh, that's good to hear. With Pam, however.
Naruto took a brief moment to think things over, but it seemed to not go well with Selina on the silence.
What's wrong with Pam, Naruto?
Sigh, she lost her job at Star Labs.
What? What?
The environmentalist yelled out, making Naruto pull his phone away from his ear for a moment.
But how? How could she lose her job from over there? Didn't they pay off her medical bills and whatnot? They did. Selina and the board was hoping for their star botanist to come back after being discharged from medical leave.
But Pam found out through a letter they sent to inform of her that they had to let her go. They grew tired of waiting and had no choice but to give her the pink slip.
Damn.
She must have been in one hell of a rough patch.
Tell me about it.
Ivy told me, when I went to check up on them the other day, was that the letter came in the day before the gas incident and the document inside was dated a few days prior. Pam felt so miserable when reading it several times that she got reclusive and Ivy became dominant until Pam got better.
So, were you able to cheer her up at least? Selina asked out in concern for her share friend.
I did my best to try and cheer Pam up. But when she spoke out, it was very hard for her to deal with. Sure, she was able to heal a bit, but the pain was still there.
With losing a job that she worked at for a long time? Hell yeah, I would feel the same way. Reason why I'm mostly self-employed. Well, it was unfair on how they fired Pam.
So, I went over there and tried to talk to most of the board members that were at the building at the time. It was mostly a majority vote that got Pam to no longer work there. It was a pain in the ass, but I was able to convince them to let Pam reapply for the company once she's out of Arkham.
Well, that's a bit of a silver lining right there.
Yeah, and it's the best thing that could be done for now. Pam knows, and it lifted her spirits a little, that she might get her job back.
Regardless if she gets her job back or not, she'll be moving into your loft once she's out of the asylum.
Selina commented as she remembered that information from a previous conversation with the changed botanist. Especially since she hasn't paid her bills and rent for a couple of months now that she's practically homeless.
Sigh, I know.
Reason why I had to hire a few movers to help me get all of her furniture and belongings moved into a storage unit ever since she got into that place. Not the way I envisioned us moving her stuff out of her apartment and into mine.
But hey, nothing's perfect. And what about me having sex at your place once she's moved in?
I think that would be best to put a pin on that until she's out of Arkham.
Yeah, I could see your point. Speaking of, have you told Shizune about us yet? Unfortunately, yeah, I had to.
Hearing this raised one of the publisher's eyebrows before the obvious question was voiced out.
Had to?
There was nothing immediate on the response, but Naruto heard some shuffling on the other end.
Well, you remember the last time we did it in my bedroom?
Chuckles, oh how could I forget that?
Naruto said with a cheeky grin and had a feeling Selina might be blushing on the other end.
With how we tried out those new poses and you finally wore that langiri.
Yeah. Apparently Shizune caught sight of us doing it.
What? He cried out as he ended up falling off of his chair and onto the floor.
Naruto? Are you alright?
Getting back up, he picked up the phone and answered back.
Yeah, I'm fine, was just surprised is all.
But getting back onto topic, you said Shizune saw us.
Was that right?
Yeah.
How?
To sum it up, honey, doors were unlocked and weren't closed all the way.
Thought someone broke in and investigated till she heard us doing it.
Ended up seeing us in the act and Shizune quietly left, but wanted answers once we got to our hotel room.
That must have been awkward. Oh, it was Naruto.
His girlfriend groaned out and imagined her rubbing her temple in the process. Had to tell her how long it's been going on and why we got together. She thought that you were cheating on Pam, but I had to clear up that mess on my own.
Ugh. Wish you could have been here to help. I'm sorry, Selena. It's not your fault, Naruto.
Just wished that it could have been taken care of earlier to save me the problem.
But moving on to a different subject, how's Harley?
She's doing fine, but with Joker now in Arkham. He said to let it hang in the air for Selena to know what he's leading to.
Oh. Oh shit. That's not good. Yeah, I know.
I'm hoping that she doesn't get him as her patient. If she does, then I pray to Cammy that she'll make it out alive.
Same here.
She said to him before a tired yawn escaped her mouth.
Sorry honey, but it's roughly midnight over here and I need to go to sleep.
Yeah, I'll let you go now, Selena. Just get some rest and enjoy the rest of your time in China before you and Shizune get back.
Yawn, thanks. Well, good night honey. Love you. Love you too.
Naruto said as he ended the call before getting back onto his workload. It was during most of this time that his weariness was starting to get to him, with the thoughts of the Joker being at the asylum and Harley's safety. He tried to keep his mind focused at the task at hand, but he just couldn't shake off this feeling with his psychologist friend. I should probably call her and see if she wants to go out tonight for dinner or see a movie at least. He said to himself as he picked up his phone and dialed her cell phone number.
After several more rings, the intern answered. Hello, Dr. Harleen Quinzel speaking.
Hey Harley, it's Naruto.
Oh, hey Naruto, what's up? Nothing much. He briefly told her. Hey, I was wondering if you want to do something tonight. Night, Alice's apartment. Knock 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 knock. I'm coming.
Alice called out as she made her way towards her door. Once opening up the door, she was surprised to see the man before her.
Jervis? What are you doing here?
It was odd to see her coworker dressed up in such a way, with her being used to seeing the neuroscientist wear a white shirt and black pants and shoes underneath his lab coat. But this seemed very odd for him to wear. His current attire consisted of a white button-up shirt with a black bow tie and a red vest to fit with his dark brown plaid suit jacket and pants. To finish off his attire, Jervis wore a black top hat and there seemed to be a pocket watch in his vest pocket indicated with the chain attached to one of the vest buttons. Feeling that she has probably gotten an eyeful on his new attire, he took off his hat and took a deep bow before her.
Good evening, Miss Pleasance. I'm here to help you forget your recent heartbreak. For Gotham can be a wonderland, Alice. So let me be your guide for tonight. The blonde secretary gave the coworker an odd look as this was rather sudden.
Of course, the obvious question came to mind on how he knew on what happened earlier today. But then again, she was practically crying out loud on the details of the breakup so everyone knew by the end of it. She was told by a few friends of hers earlier that evening to go out and clear her head from her worries. So, after thinking things through for a few more moments, she decided to give Jervis her answer.
I'll go get my coat. Gotham Park. It was nice of you to take me out tonight, Naruto.
I really needed someone to spend time with after a long day's work.
Hey, it's no problem, Harley.
The publisher said as the two of them were walking through some areas of Gotham Park that were safe to travel through. Naruto would have driven his car towards their destination, but he felt that the two should go out on an evening stroll till they reached their destination.
So mind telling me about work as of late? I hope things have been decent at best.
They somewhat are from the usual stuff I'm doing over there. Chatting with Pam and Ivy, trying to figure out more on Magpie before I have to give her to another doctor, waiting for my turn to deal with Harvey Two-Face and doing my other tasks till I'm done with my internship.
I'm having a feeling that's not all that has been going on recently.
So ever since the Joker came back into Arkham, things have been a bit complicated at best with some of our best staff members not really getting a good read out of him. Hell, even Dr. Serrano hasn't really cracked his shell.
But that's not the half of it. Something's telling me that I'm not going to like this.
Naruto said as Harley started to rub her arm without looking at her friend in the face.
Yeah.
I'm actually assigned to take on Joker's case this time, and earlier today was my first session with him. Hearing this made him feel dread and wished this wasn't really happening, resulting him to stop in his tracks, making Harley look towards him in response.
Naruto? Why didn't you tell me earlier that you were assigned to him?
The publisher said with concern in his voice. I was assigned to him after our phone call earlier.
It was really sudden and I didn't know what to do.
The intern defended, getting her friend to look at her to see if she was lying, which there were no hints in her eyes. Seeing a nearby bench, Naruto walked over to it and sat down before Harley followed suit. When both were comfortable, Naruto decided to ask the obvious question that came to mind.
What happened in that session, Harley? Flashback. Dr. Quinzel. Yes, Dr. Serrano? Dr. Leland? Are you ready? The Hispanic woman asked the intern with a stern gaze.
You're qualified, Harleen, but I don't think anyone is ever ready for him. The three female doctors were behind a one-way mirror with a few security guards for good measure.
Reason behind all of this was plain and simple. A Joker session.
Harley was assigned by some of the Arkham staff to do a handful of sessions with the crazed clown till they say otherwise. It was rather frightening for her to take on such a big case, but she's gotten enough experience so far that she might be able to handle herself in there. Of course, the security guards would be there if anything seems amiss. After taking several deep breaths, Harley composed herself and had started to plan things out on what to possibly do in this first session with the man. She was given an hour of preparation time by going over his files, and it was a lengthy ready, but Harley got it down to the best of her ability.
I think I'm ready, Doctor.
Just so you know, the Joker isn't someone that anyone here could properly categorize.
I understand that, ma'am.
She simply said as one of the guards was ready to open the door for her.
Well, good luck in there.
One of the officers said before opening the entryway to the session room. Once the door behind her was closed, she made her way to the chair in front of her new patient with only a desk separating the two of them.
Hello there, Mr. Joker.
My name is Dr. Harleen Quinzel, and I've been assigned to be your doctor for the time being.
Not much of a talker today, I guess.
Harley thought as the man was sitting rather still with a blank face. One could consider it rather unnerving, but she had to push forward with her task at hand.
Well, I've read your file.
The beatings from your father with the occasional change-ups of him being happy from going to a circus or an ice show performance. The abandonment by your alcoholic mother, which tends to get some sympathies from the occasional parole officer or two.
The failed criminal career and even your little accident.
Harley said with a completely straight face towards the Joker's neutral one to see if there was any response to any of them.
Each and every one of them being the building blocks to your psychotic and murderous mind. But we both know that is a complete load of bullshit. From what I understand, it's all about control from you with being quite the performer. You do everything you can with your mayhem so that you can be the very eye of the storm. Because in that storm, everything is flipped upside down, except for you. Hiding behind your madness is control.
So, the way I see it, you're just a control freak with a sense of humor. Once saying her piece, things started to change a little as the Joker's mouth started to slowly shift into one of his signature grins before releasing a few chuckles to fill up the quiet room.
It wasn't long until... Ha 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 ha.
It was like an odd joke to him with holding onto his sides, but in that brief moment both Harley and the guards noticed the crazed clown have a razor blade in his hand. The guards were heading straight to the door and tried to unlock it, but something else happened.
That won't be necessary, guards. I can handle this from here.
The intern said, getting the security guards to possibly stand down, but stay at the ready.
Well, aren't you an interesting one?
The Joker finally spoke towards the blonde doctor in training.
Different from the usual privileged, blue-blooded eunuchs they send down here.
Chuckles, you've got spunk, kiddo, but you head to where you came from. He stood up from his seat and started walking around the room, but not close to the blonde woman. Your accent screams New York, but none of the whole Rockefeller variety. Seems he's going to pick me apart, piece by piece, to fully figure myself out. Harley thought as she remembered reading it in a part of the clown's file with doing this on some past doctors who tried to treat him.
Let me guess.
Local girl done good. National Honor Society, scholarships, blah blah blah. He said as he started to get a little closer to her.
But it seems that something is missing with you. Something that drives you. Something that you want, but can't have.
Well, Mr. Joker, we can't always have what we want. Harley said as she gathered up her things and started to head towards the door. So, I think that tomorrow, let's start with what that is for you.
And one other thing.
She turned around to face him dead on with his hands behind his back. If you think on wanting to stab me or cut me with that razor of yours, you better hope you don't miss. Because if you do, then I'll kick your nuts so hard through your mouth and show you how we do it in Canarsie.
Flashback end.
And once I got out of that session room, with the guards locking it up for proper transfer, I just needed some fresh air. Harley said to Naruto, who was currently holding onto her hand in comfort with her squeezing hard in the process. I was able to keep up a strong appearance in front of him, but once out of that room I couldn't hide how scared I was. I don't even know how I was able to last so long being in the same room with the man.
But it's all right, Harley,
he said with a reassuring smile. You were able to do a good job in there and I'm proud of you. She only gave him a small smile in response.
Yeah.
Dr. Leland said the same thing when she came by to console me.
It's going to be a while though if I can fully diagnose him. So yeah, I'm going to need a lot of luck in that department to help understand his chaotic mind. Well, enough about that now, Harley,
Naruto said to her as he stood up and she followed suit. We got dinner plans and I hope I can take away your problems, even if it's for just one night.
Yeah, let's.
The two friends went on their way, but if they would have stayed any longer, they would have seen a carriage come through the park with Jervis and Alice riding in the back of it. It came to a stop, getting the two co-workers to exit out of the ride. The neuroscientist paid the caddy before the man went on his way to other businesses for the evening. This is really a surprise, Jervis, the blonde secretary said as she walked alongside her co-worker through the park. You're just so quiet at work.
Ha!
Still waters run deep, my dear.
It's been a little philosophy of mine that people should take what they want from life.
Well, that's good to know, I guess. Well, that just so happens to be ours, a person said from behind the co-workers, making them turn around to see two intimidating thugs. Well, Mr. Hat, give us what money you have. Seeing these two thugs coming closer to their position, Jervis brought Alice behind him and had things at the ready. On your way, you curs, or else I'll be forced to teach you a lesson.
Jervis, you can't.
One of the thugs thought this was funny on the display, making him chuckle a little.
Well, it's funeral, you nut boy.
The two thugs grabbed a hold of Jervis by each side of his coat before bringing him to them. Watching from the sidelines, Alice couldn't look on what might become towards her friend. So, she brought her hands to cover her face from what could possibly be a gruesome sight. As the two thugs were about to beat the living hell out of the neuroscientist, the man quickly brought out two of his circuitry cards and placed them on the thugs' heads. The results were quite instant as the thugs stayed in place without moving a muscle.
Now I need to make this look convincing,
the scientist thought before he focused his thoughts into the two thugs. With their new commands, they started to beat up each other while crying out things like "Stop, Mr. Hat,"
"Go easy on us,"
or "We're sorry."
For a few more moments. When things looked satisfying enough, Jervis mentally commanded the thugs to run away and possibly jump into the Gotham River. Seems that takes care of those two,
the man thought before going over to check up on his sweet Alice.
"It's quite all right, my dear. You can open up your eyes."
She did so and looked to see the retreating thugs getting out of the park.
"Are you all right, Jervis?"
"I'm quite all right, but I'm sorry you had to possibly witness such a thing," Jervis briefly said to her with his arm wrapped around her shoulder for comfort.
They had to be taught a lesson.
Beret Rouge Club. After the little scuffle outside, the pair of co-workers eventually made it to the restaurant that Jervis had made a reservation earlier that day. It would have been difficult to do such a thing with how much a meal or so is like over there, but he has his ways. And by ways meaning using his circuitry cards on the staff, then yes. The two soon went towards the reservationist desk to finally check in for the evening.
Monsieur Tech, it is good to see you again,"
the host said with a circuitry card sticking out from the side of his head.
"I'm guessing you want your usual table?"
"Of course, my good sir," Jervis said as he silently commanded the staff to keep doing what they were doing to not arouse suspicion with others.
The mind-controlled host then ushered them to a table near the VIP section of the establishment.
Once on his way, someone soon came out to greet the two.
"Monsieur Tech."
A man came towards their table to indicate that he was the head chief of the establishment with one of the same cards placed in his hat.
"I am glad that you have come back to our fine restaurant. I have created an excellent dish for you, and it seems that I'll be making another for your date for the evening. All on the house, of course." "That is very kind of you, Antoine,"
Jervis said with a smile towards the man before he went on his way towards the kitchen to make their meal.
"Monsieur Tech,"
a woman called out as she approached the couple with another card placed in her hat.
"Would you mind if I took a picture for our celebrity wall?" "Not at all,"
the neuroscientist said as he pulled Alice closer to him for the photo. With a quick snap of the camera, the woman left to do her own thing. "I didn't know you were such a big hit around town," the blonde secretary said in wonder as her co-worker just chuckled at this.
"Well, this is a side of me that I only share with those closest to me."
Things were pretty pleasant for as their meals soon came out from the kitchen and they dug into their meals, with some violinists coming over to play several songs while they feasted.
Storybook land.
After their very pleasant meal, Jervis was able to hail a cabbie that was passing by to take the two towards their next destination. It was a bit of time getting there, but there was no rush at all with their bellies working to digest their meals, for example. When they did reach their destination, the two were greeted with a security guard with a card in his hat by the entrance of the establishment, Storybook Land. The place was made a few decades ago with the intended purpose of a fantasyland/fairy tale theme park for many alike, but mostly focused towards children. It succeeded in that aspect that many have attended the grounds for years. Some things have been taken out for updates to help get with the times, but they still come back with that nostalgic feeling whenever anyone looks at the displays, rides, etc.
Well, don't forget to lock up when you leave Tech. I won't, and have a pleasant evening, Andrew,
Jervis said as he and Alice walked past the guard. Even though Jervis had his destination in mind to wrap up the evening, he decided to take Alice through the various parts of the theme park. It was quite interesting on how things appear to be without so many people walking through the place. But after looking through all of the different sections of the place, the two made it towards Tech's preferred area of choice.
You know,
Alice in Wonderland has always been my favorite story since I was a child.
the neuroscientist said with nostalgia being laced into his speech. Do you remember the Mock Turtle song My Dear Alice? No. I don't think so, Jervis. Really? He asked with mild surprise at this. But surely you must have at least remembered some of it. It's actually quite simple really. Will you, won't you, join the dance? He briefly sang to her before grabbing her hand and going into a waltz with music playing in the air. It was rather nice on how things were going, but Alice was getting slightly confused by all of this. Especially since throughout some of the night, he had been saying my Alice and things of the sort. She wanted to at least clear up what's going on and decided to voice it. Jervis. Why do you keep saying my Alice with such familiarity? I don't know what you mean, Ms. Pleasance. He said to her as they spun around a bit more. What I'm saying is that I'm getting a little confused by what you were saying so far tonight. She said to him as they went around the caterpillar's den. I mean, it's just that tone of voice you're using. I somewhat recognize of you mistaking me for someone else. After this was said, Jervis slowly came to a stop in their dance as he let go of his coworker to let his hair cover his eyes. Oh. I'm sorry, Alice. I should have done that. Whatever do you mean? Sigh. If you must know. I used to have a sister that was very much like you. Getting the idea on what he meant, she placed her hand on his shoulder with a gentle squeeze to it. I'm sorry, Jervis. I didn't know on that. The neuroscientist just waved her off without really looking at her. No. It's quite all right. It's been years since I've talked about my sister's passing. Well, may I hear about her? Alice asked, piquing Jervis' attention. It's just a suggestion, really. The scientist could only smile at this as he went back to the caterpillar's mushroom seat with the secretary sitting not too far from him as he started to recount his times with his late sister. Bat Cave. Things were rather earlier that evening while he was doing his nightly patrols. He figured that it was just a slow night or that Benitez was taking care of things on some other parts of town. It was hard to be sure, but he couldn't fault for the other hero to do what he wanted to do to help the city. He was going to call it a night when his Batmobile picked up on the police emergency signal. It was reporting that 2 people were going to commit suicide by one of Gotham's suspension bridges, and it just so happened to be the one closest to him. Batman obviously responded and was able to use his car to propel him into the air to land in front of the possible suicidal men. It was quite odd with their blank stares on their beaten-up faces as they kept mumbling, "Mr. Hat ordered us to jump," while walking in a zombie-like state. He tried to get them to stop, but both of them seemed rather strong all of a sudden to push their way through and to fall off the highest part of the suspension bridge. Batman was lucky in grabbing a hold of the thugs and did the best he could to glide back onto the bridge. The impact was rather rough, but each of them were safe. It was rather odd though. After the landing, the 2 thugs came out of their odd state and started flipping out on how they got to the bridge. He quickly questioned them, with them stating that they were originally in the park hustling some man in a top hat with his girl, and the next thing they knew, they were on the bridge. The dark night had let them go with a warning, and as the 2 left, he saw odd circuitry cards lying on the pavement. So that's what he is doing now, looking over the cards with a 10/6 insignia placed on the other side of the piece of equipment. You know, sir, Alfred said from behind the Batman with a book in his hands, when you showed me those cards, I recalled an image from my childhood. What do you mean, Alfred? The response he was given from his old friend was placing a book in front of him with the title Alice in Wonderland before opening up to a certain chapter of the story. It seems those near suicides must have run in with a self-styled Mad Hatter. Wait a minute, Bruce said as he brought one of the cards closer to the image of Alice attending the Mad Hatter's tea party. I saw that same scene earlier today in one of my employees' labs. A scientist who makes circuitry similar to this. So, what are you going to do, Master Bruce? The butler asked as his young ward adopted a thinking pose for a few moments. Well, Alice's apartment building. Thank you for a wonderful time, Jervis. I needed someone to spend time with to get out of my worries, Alice said as Jervis escorted her back home. You're one hell of a great friend. Until tomorrow, my dear Alice, and thank you for listening to my sad tale. It's no problem at all, was all she said before her coworker brought her knuckles towards his lips and kissed them briefly in a gentlemanlike fashion. Still though. Tomorrow and every day afterwards, he said as she walked up the stairs towards her apartment complex. As she went, Jervis waved her goodbye while dancing in an odd way. What she didn't know was that the coworker was going back to all of the places they went to earlier to get back his circuitry cards so nothing would seem out of the ordinary. Heh, what a sweet guy, Alice muttered to herself as she went inside. Once closing the door, she ended up hearing someone behind her. Turning around, she came face to face with Billy? What are you doing here? Said man was a head taller than her with combed dark hair dressed in a black suit. From what she could see from her ex-boyfriend was some tear stains on his face with a rose in his hand. He came up to her and said a simple sentence to her. Hey Alice. Can we talk? Morning, Wayne Enterprises. Jervis couldn't have felt happier in his entire life as he walked through the doors of his workplace. He was so happy, in fact, that he wore the same suit he had on last night to work today. Sure, he'll be needing to wear a lab coat over it, but he didn't care at all. The neuroscientist came through those doors with the biggest grin he could muster with a bouquet of roses he had gotten earlier that morning. Will you, won't you, join the dance? He sang softly as he walked through the several cubicles of the building, while also saying positive things to various employees along the way. It was rather odd for what everyone was seeing, but they eventually went back to their own things for the day. Will you, won't you? He said as he got closer to see Alice at her desk, seemingly a lot happier from last night. Good morning, Ms. Pleasance. Oh Jervis, good morning, the secretary said in a very cheerful tone. I've still got to thank you so much from last night. It's no problem at all. Well listen, since I have the best of news to tell you, she said, which piqued his curiosity, but ushered her to continue. Billy was there after you dropped me off and he apologized to our big fight yesterday. I forgave him and giggles and then he gave me this. From what Jervis saw in her hand, or more importantly her finger, horrified and infuriated him greatly, an engagement ring. I'm getting married, Jervis. Isn't that wonderful? Alice said in joy, not knowing what was going through her coworker's mind. Of course, she eventually noticed the neuroscientist's hand starting to bleed due to the thorns puncturing his skin. Especially with a drop of blood came in contact with the framed photo of the now engaged couple. Jervis, you're bleeding. Oh. It's nothing really. Forget it, Alice, the man said as he walked past her and went into his lab. Congratulations on your engagement. She felt really worried for her friend as she called out his name several times, but they fell onto deaf's ears while several things were running through the man's head. Once closing the door to his lab, things were starting to boil greatly inside of him. Next thing he knew, he tossed his bouquet of roses to the side and slammed his hands onto the nearby table. That fucking son of a bitch, Jervis yelled out in a harsh whisper. He swooped in without me knowing and took her from me. From there, he paced around the lab with several thoughts coming to mind as he ended up saying them out loud. I can fix this. I can still win her heart. His thought process was interrupted as the door to his lab opened up violently with Dr. Cates walking through the door. Tetch. I don't know what you did, but Bruce Wayne wants to see you now, the redhead yelled out, not knowing what was going on with Jervis at the moment. I swear to God that it's your head if you got this department in any trouble. Shut the fuck up, Dr. Cates, the neuroscientist growled out as he rushed at her and placed one of his cards in her hair to get her in his complete control. Now if you would be so kind as to follow me since we've got work to do. Nothing went on for a while now as Alice was in her self-indulgent bliss as she kept herself busy in her work.
So much in fact that she didn't notice someone was approaching her until it was too late. With a tap on her shoulder, the blonde secretary jumped in her seat with a slight eep before turning around to see who did the act.
"Oh, phew, it's just you, Mr. Wayne. Sorry on doing that to you, Alice,"
the playboy said in an apologetic tone.
"Nah, it's quite all right, sir,"
she said in a forgiving tone before putting all of her attention towards her boss.
"So, what can I do for you?"
"Well, I was wondering if you've seen Dr. Cates or Jervis Tech?"
"Yeah, I have, but they left together like half an hour ago, I think."
"Together?"
Ring 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 ring.
"Oh, sorry sir.
Got to take this," she said before answering the phone.
"Hello?
Alice Pleasance speaking.
Oh, hi sweetie," Alice said before turning to Bruce in a cheerful tone.
"My fiancé, we got engaged last night."
"Congratulations,"
Bruce said in a happy tone to see his employee like this.
He'd heard of what happened yesterday through the grapevine, but it seemed that Alice and Billy patched things up in a great way. As Alice was speaking on the phone, he couldn't help but notice the little bloodstain on the framed photo and wondered what that was about. Bruce was going to ask about it when he heard his employee in a worried tone.
"Billy? What's wrong? You sound so..."
But
why?"
she cried out before the line went dead.
"Billy! Alice! What's wrong?"
the dark-haired man asked while seeing the blonde secretary starting to shed tears in front of him.
Sorry Mr. Wayne, but I think I'll need a minute alone,"
she said before bringing her hands to her face as she bawled her eyes out. Bruce didn't know what was going on, but he had the sinking feeling that something was completely wrong here.
But for now, he came up to his employee and gave her a reassuring hug, which she didn't refuse to take.
She needed a shoulder to cry on right now with what has just happened to her.
Night, Alice's apartment building.
Alice was coming back home from a long day's work. It wasn't all that busy at all, mind you, but with what went on earlier that day seemed to make every minute and hour seem an eternity for her. Feeling like she was at the top of the world, only for it to come tumbling down to land her in the gutter. Mr. Wayne was so kind to let her go home early with what just came up, but she refused the offer since she wanted to work a full honest day despite what happened. So, throughout the entire day, Alice had been trying to focus on her workload. But all that she kept thinking about was Billy and what made him change his mind on their engagement. The blonde even thought about it once she got off and went to her usual ice cream place to eat a little to soothe her problems. After that, she slowly walked back to her apartment complex with her reddened eyes and tear stains on her face. Once opening up the front door to the building, she was greeted with the hallway entirely covered in a variety of flowers. She was utterly speechless with what was in front of her. As Alice navigated her way through to the door to her apartment, she didn't notice someone was approaching her from behind. Once opening the door though, she heard it.
"Alice! You're finally back!"
she screamed in fright as she turned around to see Jervis staring right at her with seemingly odd joy present in his eyes.
"I had to come back once I've heard that cat of a fiancé abandoned you again." How did you know?" Alice said in bewilderment. "I didn't tell anyone at all. Asides from Mr. Wayne."
She felt uneasy right now and needed to get away from Jervis immediately. So, she quickly opened up her apartment door and went inside, but he got inside before she got the chance to close the door.
"It doesn't matter, my sweet Alice,"
he said with an all-too-sweet tone to his voice. "What matters now is that we have each other and nothing will tear us apart." The secretary started to back away from her crazed coworker when she ended up bumping into something solid. For a quick moment, Alice thought that it was her couch or even her floor lamp, but it was entirely something else. Turning around, she saw a dark figure there and she screamed until she realized who it was, the Batman.
"What have you done with Marcia Cates and this woman's fiancé Tech?"
the Dark Knight questioned as the neuroscientist backed away slightly from the new arrival.
I would play along with your little game, but I think we should play another."
Jervis said as he started to play with his hat a little before the sounds of pounding started to come from the apartment's door. Soon a giant sledgehammer came busting through, causing Alice to shriek out in fright. With the door demolished, two figures stepped on through wearing bodysuits of a walrus bodysuit in a tux and a carpenter. I have anticipated this moment sooner or later. The neuroscientist taunted as the two people walked towards Alice and the hero of Gotham. So, I decided to enlist for some help. Let me introduce you to a few friends of mine, the walrus and the carpenter. Without any warning, the carpenter ran towards the Dark Knight with his weapon aimed towards his head. The attack was soon evaded as the hero rolled out of the way before grabbing the coffee table and slammed it against the dressed-up man. Soon the walrus came rushing in for the offense, but Batman yanked off the window curtains and threw them onto the man before jumping onto him. The struggle was intense with the dressed-up man frantically moving around and ending up slamming Batman against the wall a few times. As the fight went on, Jervis sneaked up from behind and grabbed Alice's arm. She screeched in fright before asking the obvious question. "Why are you doing this, Jervis?" "For us, my sweet Alice," he said to her as he placed his mind control card in her headband. "Trust me, my dear. I didn't want it to go this way." With the card in place, he focused his thoughts on her to put the blonde secretary to sleep. With it successful, Jervis carried her like a bride and rushed out of the apartment as the hero of Gotham was being kept busy by his two mind-controlled lackeys. Batman was struggling against the walrus as he seemed stronger than he appeared to be. The bat was soon thrown to the side of the room with the walrus coming ever much closer to him with the intent to skewer him with his mighty tusks. When coming down with them, they were blocked by another piece of furniture lying around, but they were torn into bits. The disguised playboy was going to get back into the offensive if it wasn't for the carpenter to slam him from behind and onto the ground. With the hero disoriented for a brief moment, it gave the walrus all the time he needed to grab the man in a bear hug in the attempt to skewer him once more. But the bat saw this and grabbed the costumed head to stop the advancement. It was rough, but with all his might, he threw the walrus over his head, whom impacted with the carpenter to end up knocking each other out on the floor. With both of them incapacitated, Batman went down and removed their masks to reveal ordinary people? But that seemed rather odd, even for him. Of course, once looking closer, he saw the same circuitry cards from before placed on their heads. Batman removed both of them, of course, just in case if they woke up anytime soon. With that out of the way, he soon checked the costumes to see where they originally belonged to and found his answer. He looked at the tags by the collars, which had the custom writing depicting that the suits were property of Gotham's Storybook Land. Storybook Land. Batman didn't know how Jervis Tetch was able to arrive at the park before him, but it didn't matter once he walked past the open gates. With the logical conclusion where his former employee is located, he would obviously reside at the Wonderland section of the theme park. Though of course which part exactly was the question. As he got closer to the nearest attraction, being the Royal Card Maze, the speakers sprang to life. "Twinkle twinkle little bat, I ever wonder where you're at," Jervis said over the speakers. "Hope you can find me soon, Dark Knight." He navigated through some of the attractions when he ended up at the giant chessboard area of Wonderland. When he did, he saw an odd sight to behold of a variety of mind-controlled people dressed up in Wonderland-themed outfits. From the dodo, the Cheshire Cat, the March Hare, and the Gecko. "Now this is a game more to my liking," Jervis said from up high with Alice by his side. From what the Batman has seen, his employee was now in an Alice in Wonderland costume as the main character from Lewis Carroll's story. What was more odd about her was that she was unmoving and seemed like a soulless shell. "What have you done, Jervis?" Bruce growled in thought before his ex-employee spoke again. "Are you, the famous Batman, so intent in destroying my happiness that you'll harm these poor mind-warped innocents to get to me?" The Mad Hatter yelled out. Chuckles, "Well, let's find out, shall we?" Without a warning, Batman's senses seemed to be on the alert as he ducked and moved out of the way as a bladed weapon came sailing through the air and sliced through several statue heads. Looking for the person responsible, the disguised business owner saw who it was.
Off with his head.
Dr. Cates, now dressed up as the Red Queen of Hearts, yelled out as she sliced through several pawn statues with her sharp axe.
With her mind-controlled advancement, the others followed suit as they lunged at the bat.
He didn't want to harm any of them at all, but he might come down to no choice if it comes down to it. When he was able to shrug off the grasps of the gecko off of him, he was sent flying into a display mushroom by the March Hare's kick. Oh, I might have forgotten to tell you one itsy bit of information, Batman, but the control over them has increased their strength. The Hatter said as he laughed at the display before him. So, I guess you found that out the hard way then.
Then maybe some backup would suffice.
A voice called out from above before two scarfs grabbed a hold of two of the mind-controlled people. The Bat and the Hatter looked towards the source to find Vanitas standing on a floating spear with his arms stretched out.
How did you find us? Batman asked as he dodged a blow from the gecko.
You were practically speeding over here while I was patrolling bats, Vanitas said as he struggled to keep his hold on the costumed people.
Lucky for you, I followed. Insert Alice Madness Returns, Puppet Master Extended. Red Queen.
Jervis yelled out as he mentally commanded his former boss to slice the bindings with her axe. She complied as the action caused the black and white hero to end up falling off of his placement and onto the ground below.
Well, that wasn't very nice,
the hero said as he dodged one of the blows of the Red Queen's axe.
Off with his head. No, I would like to keep my head, thank you, Vanitas yelled out as he rolled out of the way from the woman's swings. Don't hurt them, Vanitas. They're mind-controlled into doing this,
the Bat yelled out as he dodged several blows from the mind-controlled people.
Well, tell them that,
Vanitas yelled out as he ended up dodging another axe strike before kicking the woman away from the weapon.
As this went on, the Mad Hatter saw the new addition to his game and gritted his teeth at him.
With the new hero in the mix, might hamper his plans, but luckily, he came prepared for just the occasion. So he focused his mind to the forested area of the theme park as a good dozen or so people started walking towards the giant chessboard.
I won't let you ruin my game, Vanitas,
the crazed man yelled out, getting said hero's attention.
So how about you play with my white rabbits?
Wondering what the man was talking about, he looked around to see a large amount of people wearing white rabbit masks. What seemed odd though were said people's attire to reveal them to be in ordinary clothing of the thuggish variety.
It seemed that the man with the top hat must have gotten them off of the streets and onto this place somehow.
So, he willed his eskrima sticks into his hands and dashed towards the closet white rabbit drone and started his assault on him. There was so much that he could do on damage against the drones. He would have done more, but these were considered innocent in all of this and weren't really doing any crimes. So, Vanitas needed to just incapacitate them. It was lucky during his assaults on these men that they didn't have any weapons on them at all, so he'll make quick work with them. Vanitas dodged and rolled out of the way before slapping his sticks against various parts of their bodies before grabbing their heads to slam them into each other to not only knock them out, but to also break the masks in the process on several. He even had to sweep some off of their feet before slamming his weapons onto the masks to keep up on the process. Of course, a horde started coming after him, causing the disguised publisher to pull out smoke bombs from his utility belt and threw them onto the ground to create a large amount of coverage for not only him, but also for the Bat. In their confusion, Batman needed to get out of his hold from the gecko, whom grabbed him moments ago. So, he reached down and pulled off the large mask off of the man's head. In response, a mind control card fell onto the ground with the man releasing his hold. Once that was done, the Bat looked onto the man and recognized him from Alice's framed photo and said woman's fiancé, Billy.
Oh God, my head.
The now revealed Billy moaned out before seeing the hero of Gotham in front of him.
Batman? What's going on? There's the knave,
the Queen said through the smoke.
Off with his head. Oh my God. Will you shut her up?
Vanitas yelled out as he took care of the various white rabbit drones.
Ignoring the other hero for the brief moment, Batman turned his attention towards Billy.
They are only programmed to attack me,
but not you. Yeah, I got you, bats. Billy said as he carefully walked around one of the mind-controlled people and pulled off the headpiece to deactivate the mind control. Said man ended up doing the same process on the other victims to end the unknown misery that fell upon them. From up high, Tetch gritted his teeth once again as Alice's fiancé was ruining things once again for him. So, he grabbed Alice's hand and ran off of the platform with her as he spoke towards her. Come now, my dear, it's time to get away from this mess. As Tetch was running towards the maze, he had picked up the fallen queen's axe before entering the card-themed area. It wasn't long for Batman to follow after the Hatter as he entered its confusing hallways in hopes of finding the madman with the captive secretary. Unknown to him, the Hatter and the mind-controlled Alice were actually on the other side of one of the walls beside the hero. After navigating through the maze for a few minutes, the card walls started to move on their own to box in the Batman. You're mighty in Gotham, Batman. But here, in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter reigns supreme. Jervis yelled out over the speakers before he bellowed out a madly laugh of his own. Knowing he wasn't going to go far from his placement, he climbed up the card-themed walls and started jumping across various ones till he got accustomed to a leap-like run. Batman almost fell a few times in this run with the walls changing way too quickly, but he started to grow accustomed to this new happening. He continued with his search until he saw Jervis hunched over a set of controls of the changing maze. Seeing the bat's shadow from above, Jervis quickly grabbed the Queen's axe before he was tackled by the hero. The two soon crashed through the metal walls and into an opened area where Alice was sitting at a dining table. Batman would have reached out towards his employee, but Jervis yelled out from behind with the intent to kill the Dark Knight. Said hero was able to grab his former employee and tossed him overhead, who landed onto the dining table causing all of the dinnerware to fall off and break upon impact on the ground. Once getting back up, Tetch growled out with his eyes glaring holes into the bat. I'll cut that cowl off your neck before you take her. I've waited my entire life for her. Then all you've waited for is a puppet, Jervis. A soulless little doll. In response, Jervis looked towards his sweet Alice's unmoving form on her placement in her big chair. But it didn't have to be this way. You and that bastard Billy made me this way. Soon the Mad Hatter ran towards the Batman while swinging his axe around in hopes of lopping the hero's head right off. But with how fast the man was going, he wasn't able to quickly change directions as the bat moved out of the way to cause Tetch to run into one of the card walls. The bat soon went inside to find his former employee, but it seemed the man ran off somewhere inside of the maze. While he was searching for the neuroscientist, he didn't realize the walls of metallic cards falling over until it was too late. One of the cards fell on top of him and caused him to topple over to get trapped between the fallen walls. Batman tried to get out, but Tetch came running in with his axe raised up high to cleave the man's head wide open. That would have been the case if a razor-sharp card didn't sail right through the air and cut the rope holding the hanging Jabberwock statue. Seeing the enlarging shadow from below, Jervis looked up to see the falling Jabberwocky. He screamed in response as he was slammed down onto the ground with him being entrapped by its mighty claws. Batman struggled to get out of his placement, but he felt a hand grab a hold of his arm and pulled him out quite easily. You're welcome, by the way. Vanitas said as he helped Batman get onto his feet. Would have liked it if you helped me take care of those drones, but whatever. Ignoring the other hero for a moment, the bat went towards the top hat and slammed his foot down onto the piece of clothing. There was a crunching noise that soon followed before he kicked the hat to the side to reveal the broken pieces of the mind control headband on the ground. Vanitas wondered if that was what was controlling all of those people and was going to ask about it, but his eyes caught onto Billy walking closer to the seated Alice. Said man reached out and took off the headband placed on Alice's head before the woman shook out of her stupor and looked towards the man with loving eyes. The couple embraced each other and kissed each other's lips while saying sweet nothings to each other in the process. The disguised publisher couldn't help but look at it with a smile, and the same reaction went on with the bat. Would not, could not. A voice from behind said, getting Vanitas and Batman to see Jervis looking at the sight before him. Would not, could not, oh could not join the dance. The mocking turtle's song.
Vanitas mumbled in recognition to what that phrase was from as he peered to the side to see the statue of said fictional character weeping rivers of tears. He was going to say something else, but felt something coming from the distance and looked towards the source. Only to find nothing. Must have been my imagination. He thought as he saw Batman call the GCPD on what has just occurred. If Vanitas kept looking at the previous spot, he would have seen a dark portal form from the darkness as a figure stepped out. Something seemed rather mysterious about this person as he gazed onto the scene inside of the card-like maze. With what little light there was in the park, one would have seen more details of the individual, but all one could have seen was what the person was wearing. Said attire was a full-length black coat with a hood covering up the person's head entirely with a waist-high slit riding up the back to be similar to a duster. There was a large silver zipper that fastened at the top and zips down to seal the coat. It has silver drawstrings for the hood decorated with a large silver bead hanging from the end and a silver chain ornament adorned with 4 large cylindrical silver beads that fastens to a loop on either side of the collarbone region. Everything else that could have been visible was covered up by leather gloves and black boots and pants. The figure did nothing at all as he stood on top of a tree branch before several cards slipped out of his sleeve and into his hand. He started to play a little card trick with them before tossing the cards into the air. Said objects soon enlarged themselves and encircled the mysterious figure in a slow pace. "Let the games begin," was all the man said in a whisper as the cards soon dispersed themselves to show the man was gone. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction. Looking forward to having you on board again.